Then I will call to order the Plan Commission meeting on December 21st, 2021 at 6:32. First up on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Any changes at all?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Ed, seconded by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, minutes are approved. Public appearances for non-agenda items. I think everyone's here for something on the agenda. I'm not aware of anyone that's here for a non-agenda item. So we can move along to agenda review. Hey, Rich. And Randy, did you want to just do one quick?
Yes, I'd like to move under agenda items 5R through U to just after 5A, second on the agenda item list.
All right. Let's see.
Second.
Seconded by Ed. All in favor of making that change, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, those will be moved up. And thank you. Do you know which one this is for? Jamie, which item are you here to speak on? I'm sorry? Which item are you here to speak on? For lot 6. The cell tower thing? I'm sorry, which one? The tower. Okay. All right. All right. Then we will go to A, public hearing and consideration of ordinance 2021-023 and Plan Commission Resolution PCR 0221. I believe Ned is on the line to do a quick overview. Ned, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
We can.
Excellent. This is a parcel just east of Index Road within the North Fish Hatchery corridor. It is contemplated within the North Fish Hatchery visioning that the city approved to have a arts/sports precinct. And we've been contemplating a potential development there and having discussions with the owner, Bowman Farms. And in that context, when we proposed the concept of some artist lofts, which would combine retail and commercial space focused on the arts with housing oriented to be ownership housing that might appeal to folks interested in or participating in the arts community, we were advised that the current future zoning, which I believe is business, might not be appropriate in a situation where there might be more housing space than commercial space within the final development that was approved, and suggested that we seek a minor comp plan amendment to change it to mixed use that would allow a mix of business and residential use under the future zoning provisions. And so we have sought that approval and are here before the Plan Commission to do that. We don't have detailed plans at this point. We're still at the point of negotiating with the owner, but we believe that a mixed-use zoning would appropriately support this fish hatchery visioning, no matter the future development, as it provides a better transition from the high-density residential to the south and west, and business industrial to the north and east of the property as is.
All right, excellent. Lisa, would you like to do a staff report?
Sure. So I'll just share my screen so that everybody can see what we're looking at. All right, so this is the general area where the property is. We have Fish Hatchery Road going right here, and then this dashed area. So that's lot 6, Maple Lawn Heights. As you can see on the future land use map, currently designated as business, and this would change that future land use designation to mixed use, which would allow the property to be rezoned and be developed as a mixed use development as opposed to business. As you can see, as described in the memo, you have some industrial uses to the north. You have the city of Madison to the east, which also has industrial uses. And then you have primarily high density residential surrounding, as well as some of that mixed-use business corridor that we would expect to see along the Fish Hatchery Road corridor. So in terms of a process, so the city's comprehensive plan can be amended no more frequently than twice per year, and amendments have to be sponsored by either the planning department, the mayor, or 3 members of the common council. And the action that you would all be taking tonight, if you were to, you're making a decision to approve or deny a plan commission resolution which adopts the ordinance. And you're also voting on you're recommending on an ordinance that would go to council to adopt the amendment. The staff memo provides some more detail. So in a business land use, you expect to see more like offices, showrooms, warehouses, and light industrial buildings, as opposed to in a mixed use land use category. You expect to see a variety of housing units, types, and densities, along with neighborhood scale retail, business, and office. And then as Ned alluded to, we do have the Fish Hatchery visioning document, which states some goals such as promoting economic growth and stability, transitioning the Fish Hatchery Road corridor more to an urban form, and then creating that youth arts and sports district. And as Ned, the developer, has described, they are interested in doing a sort of artist lofts condominium project that combines housing with the potential to provide some space for artists as well. And I think that's all the detail I have. If you have any questions, I can answer those.
All right, thank you. All right, first I will open the public hearing. Just a reminder for members of the public, we do ask you to speak in 3 minutes or less. I do not have anyone from the public that wants to speak on this one though, so I can close the public hearing and open up to questions, comments from Planning Commission. Ed?
I have a question for Lisa. How do you feel that this proposal fits in with the visioning and the plans for that area?
Sure. Yeah, I think that, and this is something that we discussed with the sponsor as well as the developer. So, you do have high density residential next to some existing sort of industrial business spaces. So, it may be appropriate in this location to provide something of a transition where you're providing both the retail and the residential use in one space. I also think, the site has obviously been vacant for many years. Can't say if that's specifically because of the kind of use that's permitted there. There's a little bit of a delay on my end, so let me know if I'm not coming through. And then we also have the Ochala mixed use project that's just across the road on lot 22 Maple Lawn Heights that council did just grant the PDD GIP zoning for that project. And that's a mix of residential as well as some retail use there. So you're kind of, I think, seeing, the potential for this area to provide more of a mixed use developments just in general.
Thanks.
I can, speak to, I do like the transition to the industrial from the apartments. Also having this kind of a mixed use condo type project is something we don't have in that area of the city, which I think is also fantastic to really get something besides apartments and big apartment buildings in that area. So that's one of the reasons why I sponsored this change, and I hope to see this come through pretty soon. Other comments or questions?
I got a quick question.
Yeah, Rich.
The southeast corner is probation and parole building. What is that? On Google Maps.
Sorry, can you repeat?
On Google Maps, southeast of the site is a probation and parole building. I was curious what is that? Not that I've ever been there. I mean,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with all the buildings that are located there. I think southeast corner is probably in the city of Madison. So I can't speak to exactly what happens on that property.
I'm just curious.
Anyone else ready?
Yeah, I think I'd like to underscore or emphasize your remarks and Ed's remarks as well. This is really a great transition. If you look at it in Google Maps, you have the higher density to the south, and then off to the east you have the more industrial, and then of course the arts to the north, and then some more residential to the left. I mean, it just seems logical that it would be a transition, and this is a great location for it.
Emily?
I would echo Randy's comments, and I also think that that nice mix of residential and commercial, with all the apartment buildings around it, you have a built-in base for those businesses, and I think it will just really help create a nice neighborhood for people. Will make it much more walkable, and I think it's a positive development.
Anyone else, or a motion?
Do we need a motion, or what do we, because it says staff recommendation is to provide a recommendation on the ordinance.
Yeah, so I think it's, we can approve, deny, or change it however we want. Staff wasn't going to necessarily recommend the policy decision.
Well, then I'll move to approve ordinance 2021-0-23. And plan
Second.
commission, they need to be separate or together?
Let's do them separate.
Okay.
And did I hear a second by Emily? All right, second by Emily. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. All right, that one's approved, and then next piece to it.
I move to approve plan commission resolution PCR-02-21.
Second.
Seconded by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. All right, that one's also approved. Thanks, Ned, for checking in from down under.
Thank you for your support and have a Merry Christmas, everyone.
All right, we're going to jump to R then, based on that change in the agenda. And we've got Brian and Chris and Dan here to go through this project quick. There's a lot of items that are all related to the same thing.
Good evening. Good to see everybody again. We're working our way through the process currently. We've been having productive meetings with staff and addressing the comments that were brought forth before us and staying on schedule. So just here is part of the formality, and we'll give you a quick overview this time as opposed to last time when we went through the whole project from A to Z. Now we really have not changed much because we've been in line with everything that's been detailed for us. So Brian will just kind of highlight where we're at and where we're going.
Thank you, Chris. Again, so this is the next step in the process of zoning, moving past the comprehensive development plan that this body approved previously. So what you see here, of course, is that comprehensive development plan for the entire property. And today we're here to talk about two of the three zoning areas. So the plan unit development general implementation plan for the single family and attached single family product, and then the RL zoning, which is anticipation of the school site. This is consistent, fully consistent with the adopted CDP. So it's a pretty straightforward transition from the CDP to the zoning districts that help facilitate the individual homes and overall project. Of course, coupled with this is the preliminary plat that then covers the entire site. So we're happy to be back tonight, as we said, with the next step, really built off of the conversations we had previously. So appreciate the time tonight.
Lisa, would you like to do a staff report?
So I think I agree with the applicants that everything is consistent with both the CDP that was approved as well as the pre-application PDD that you all have seen previously. So not many changes. I think, the only thing that really is a change is that they had previously been showing some private park space throughout the development that will now become all public park space. I know that Parks Commission reviewed the proposal through the CDP and found that that was appropriate, as well as the Director of Public Works concurred with that. So that's one change. And then, we're just continuing to work with the applicant on some of the water and sewer locations as well as fire access. And we hope to have that all resolved before the final plat is submitted, as well as the PDD SIP. So pretty consistent. If you want me to review anything, I can definitely do that. And so just procedurally, I will note that the rezone was separated into, which one is it? So we have RZ-2416-21A is the PDD rezone. And then RZ-2416-21B is the rezone for the RL property that will become the school site. And that's really just procedural because the GIP ordinance is crafted differently than our other rezone ordinances. So that just facilitates the process on our end. So we'll be voting on those items separately. And then we also have the preliminary plat, which is consistent with what we've seen previously.
All right. I will open the public hearing for RZ 241621A. I don't have anyone from the public who wants to speak on that, so I can close the public hearing on that one and open up to questions or discussion. We've talked about it quite a bit, so it seems like people are pretty comfortable probably with it. So if someone wants to do it.
This was as we expected. So I'll move approval of RZ 2416-21A.
Second.
Seconded by Stephen. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, going on to S, I'll open the public hearing for S. Again, don't have anyone from the public, so I can close the public hearing on S and open up to any other questions or motion.
Move approval of RZ 2416-21B.
Second.
I think there are 3 conditions as noted.
Okay,
Staff member.
with 3 conditions, and then, was it Zach that had the second? Oh, Randy had the second. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. And then we can go to T, which is the preliminary plat request. Anything additional on that? Randy?
Motion to approve preliminary plat request PP-2415-21
With the conditions?
with the conditions.
I believe there's 10 of them.
10 conditions.
I'll second.
Seconded by Ed. All in favor, say aye.
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 And I had aye too. And opposed, nay. All right, that's approved. And now, do you want to speak to the multifamily piece before we go to that? Anything additional on that? Brian?
Nope. Nope.
Okay.
I think that
Lisa?
we might have a separate applicant for that
Yeah.
one, yep.
That's
Oh, we do, okay.
Yep.
all right.
Sorry.
you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And is the applicant for you here? I'm not sure who that is. Oh, Greg, are you online?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Great.
Okay, my audio's been kind of funny tonight too, so hopefully I can understand you and you guys can hear me. I wasn't expecting to be up quite this quick, but I appreciate getting moved up.
We can push you back if you want. Just
No,
kidding. Oh,
It's okay. I had hoped to be there in person, but we had somebody in the office that may have been exposed to COVID, so we're just out of an abundance of caution. I guess I'm gonna do this through Zoom and hopefully everybody can
sure.
hear me and understand and see what I'm talking about. Do we want to share my screen or?
I'm able to share those 3 exhibits from the application. Would you like to do that?
Can you use the ones I sent this today? It's just 3 images.
If you have them up, then maybe it'd be easier if you shared your
Okay.
screen.
If I'm. Did that come up?
Yep, we can see it right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm on my laptop here, so I will attempt to go through my presentation without losing where I'm at. But, so we just went through the rezoning for the Viridian component of this, and now we're working on the multifamily component of Highfield Reserve. This is our pre-application PDD. I think basically we're one step behind Brian and Chris going through. So what we're trying to do is get our request in and get some comments back on our request for PDD zoning on these lots. We're requesting PDD zoning for these lots because we'd like to reduce the setbacks and make some other revisions to the bulk requirements of the RH district. This will allow us to provide a project that is both cohesive with the rest of the residential development and also provide additional open space on the site. We intend to use the open space created to provide outdoor amenity space for the residents of the development. On the site location map currently displayed, the Highfield Reserve development is the gray area located in the center of the image, an area generally bounded by Lacey Road to the north, Irish Lane to the south, Fish Hatchery Road to the west, and Sain Road to the east. This is the neighborhood plan overlaid on an aerial of the, it shows the relationship of the development to the surrounding lands. Fahey Glen, do you see my cursor on the screen?
We do.
When I,
Yep.
okay, just so I can kind of point. So Fahey Glen is going to be extended from the roundabout with Noel Drive, and it's going to cut down here to the southwest and to the east. And the multifamily sites on this development are going to be the two sites to the north of Fahey Glen in the brown here. The multifamily site will form a buffer to the higher residential areas here to the north and the non-residential areas up here to the single family component of the project down here to the south. And then also we have the institutional site, which was just discussed, which is going to be a school here to the east of the multifamily site, which did play a little bit into the design of our site. So here's our site plan overlaid onto or colored up here, kind of define the different types of buildings we're going to have. One of the themes of the Highfield Reserve project as a whole has been to provide a diversity of housing types that serve a broad range of residents within a single development. And we intend to follow through on this theme by providing a diverse mix of housing types and unit styles on the multifamily site. Starting down here in the southwest part of the site, running along Fahey Glen, we have some two-story townhomes. These are kind of smaller scale buildings. It act kind of as a buffer to the three-story buildings that are to the north of them between the single family and the three-story. They're a little bit smaller scale in keeping with this smaller scale single family here. And then as we move up Fahey Glen, this blue area is the institutional part of the site. We go to a slightly larger scale building. These are also two-story buildings, but they're walk-up apartments with underground parking. And we'll have a mix of different unit types in these. There'll be some 2 and 3 bedrooms in the townhomes, and there'll be some 1+ dens and 2 bedrooms in these walk-up. These will be stacked flats. Internal to the site then, we have these 3-story garden-style apartments, we'll call them. And these buildings will have underground parking as well, elevator service, and they'll be kind of take the more dense component of the site and move it here to the north. Over here, there's some multifamily to the north of our site as well. We're still trying to figure out exactly what we want to do with these open spaces. We've kind of gained some space by clustering these buildings together. We've had discussions about having dog parks. I'm sure there'll be some grilling areas, some covered seating areas, possibly community gardens, maybe some more organized sport type activities, some sports courts of some sort, but we're still working on that and the actual architecture of the buildings. We worked pretty hard on the unit mix and the building layout on the site, the parking. We still have some work to do as far as what we're going to do landscape wise and for amenities on the site. And then for architecture on the buildings, we had some comments from staff where they expressed a desire that we would have that kind of cohesive architecture across this project, and we intend to do that. And we intend to use high quality materials, masonry and composite siding materials on the project. So at this point, you know, the site's pretty well defined, and I think next time we come back, we would have a lot more information as far as the architecture and the details of the site goes.
All right.
And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Yeah, thank you. Lisa, do you want to do a staff report?
Oh, I gotta stop sharing.
Lisa, you want to do a staff report?
All right. Yeah, I have a bit of I got a warning about unstable internet connection. So again, I apologize. Do let me know if for some reason there's a delay. All right, so I think everyone on Plan Commission is relatively familiar with the pre-application PDD process. So This is opportunity for the Plan Commission to provide feedback to the applicant as to whether or not the use of PDD zoning is appropriate for this type of development.
Uh-oh. Just froze up on us. We can't hear you anymore.
These outlined in the neighborhood plan are a little bit different than the other areas of the city. So this is in the R2 medium density residential land use, which has a minimum density of 10 units per acre. So just to show the northern parcel that has more of the larger scale apartments has a density of 23 units per acre, almost 24. And then the southern parcel has a density of about 18.8 units per acre. So they do satisfy the density requirements there, and I think are consistent with what we would expect to see in this area. I think the mix of housing units is also consistent with what the McGaw Park neighborhood plan identified in terms of housing goals and things like that. So per the applicant, the reason that PDD zoning would also be appropriate for this project is because of the our other high density zoning district that you could pursue is our RH zoning district, but we have a minimum lot size or a maximum lot size of 90,000 square feet for any new RH lots. There's also a 30-foot minimum front setback, and it would require a conditional use permit for the density and the building height. So rather than go, through a conditional use permitting process, they have through PDD zoning, they are permitted that use by right. So those are some of the items. And then they also note that the PDD zoning allows them to provide additional green space and amenities on site by establishing the site plan as a whole, as opposed to having to create separate lots, things like that. So that's what the applicant noted in their application. Staff have not identified any concerns at this time.
All right, thank you. Comments from, or questions from Plan Commission? This is again kind of exactly what we saw earlier, so there's no surprises or anything like that, so that's good. Sounds like there might be a little more green space, or at least room for that, so that's good to hear. I know I mentioned this in previous meetings, but I do like how there's a variety of rentals, and it's a good transition from the single-family residential to the bigger apartment buildings. So I really like how we have some smaller stuff in there as well. I think that's really neat and attractive. Other people? Ed?
I agree. I don't have an issue with the PDD for this. I would support it.
Great. Anyone else? Concerns or comments at all? Seeing, looks like no. People seem to be pretty comfortable with it. No big worries or concerns or anything like that, so that's good. Then, if no one has anything else, we can keep moving. So I think that's a good sign. This is what we expected, and so thank you very much for walking us through it. And I think I can say proceed as planned.
Thank you all for your time then.
All right, thank you. All right, now we will go back to B, which is the public hearing and consideration of the telecommunications facilities permit. We've talked about this a couple times now, and I think that it might make more sense to start with Lisa. If Lisa, you could maybe kind of give us an update on where we're at and staff report. I know a few things have happened in the last month, and we have some more information. So if you could go first, that would be great.
Sure, yeah. So I'll provide the staff memo. To just want to provide a little bit of some procedural notes in terms of what everyone's seeing on the agenda. So we do have the public hearing for the telecommunication facilities permit. And then there is also the opportunity for Plan Commission to make a motion to go into closed session if they would like to do so. You don't need to go into closed session, but that is on the agenda. And if Plan Commission were to go into the closed session, then we would require all non-commission members to leave the room. So just for all the participants who are there in the room right now, just please be aware of that. Then Plan Commission would make a motion to reconvene back into open session. And then you would have discussion and possible action on the TFP. And that would be the item that Plan Commission would take action on. So you wouldn't be taking action on item B for the permit. You would be taking item on action E, just for the record. And then we have the conditional use permit as well as the architectural design review as well. So we do also have our Public Works Director, Bill Bulkey, and our City Attorney, Valerie Zeisman, on the line as well. So I think in general, the staff memo, provides a summary of the applications. It provides a timeline from their initial submittal to the meeting tonight. So I think that provides, some good background on how we got here. And it also provides some ordinance and language from our state statutes for reference, just to kind of help understand all the different codes and statutes that are impacting this application. And so I'm just going to focus primarily on the staff evaluation portion of the memo and identify and elaborate on the issues identified there. And I'll be available to answer any questions as needed. So just start off with, I can share my screen briefly as well, just so everyone is familiar with the area that we are discussing. I'll zoom in a little bit as well. All right. So this application concerns Lot 6 Assessor's Plat 2, and then a meets and bounds property referred to as Parcel A. So on the screen here, you can see this line going down is the line between Parcel A, which is this kind of triangular piece here, and then Assessor's Plat Lot 2, which is also sort of a triangle, both a little bit irregularly shaped. As you can see, the application materials show a property line around Lot 6 and Parcel A, as though the two properties are treated as a single parcel. So you can see here, this line per the legend shows the right here shows the property line. And then the applicant also calculated the setbacks for the structure based on a parcel that combined Lot 6 and Parcel A. So here you can see they have these arrows going from the tower located on Lot 6, measured to each property line. And here they show the rear setback being measured from the tower across Parcel A to the lot line here. And staff have identified two issues with this approach. So first, staff could not find any evidence that the two parcels have been legally combined. So in this situation, Dane County, who is responsible for creating tax parcels, combined these two properties into one for the purpose of taxing. So the description includes both Parcel A and Lot 6. However, they have not been legally combined into one lot. So one thing to keep in mind there. Then second, Lot 6 is zoned RD Rural Development and Parcel A is zoned AT Transitional Agriculture. So even if they were legally combined, each property constitutes a separate zoning lot. And the zoning lot is further defined in our Chapter 22 Fitchburg Ordinance as a lot containing a single zoning classification within all or part of a lot of record. So here we have Lot 6 is the RD lot, which is where the tower and the facilities would be located. And then you have Parcel A, which is zoned transitional agriculture. So the structure must comply with the zoning of the property that it is located on. So the tower is on Lot 6, and the application materials do not demonstrate that the proposed structure complies with the zoning setbacks for the RD zoning district, specifically the rear setback. So what I've just gone over, we were not able to obtain an exhibit that showed a setback measurement from the tower to the property line of Lot 6. Right, moving on. So per Fitchburg Ordinance 22-345-14, it states that the parcel of land must be of a size large enough to ensure that if a tower shall fall, it will not fall on adjacent property or on the right of way of a public road. And then in addition, we also have code language from our Fitchburg Ordinance 64-122-6 that all towers are to be designed so that the tower site and setbacks will contain guide wires, debris, and the tower in the event of a collapse. And it's my understanding that the city attorney and the director of public works have been working with the applicant to verify the contents of the fall zone letter that we have discussed at previous meetings that was provided by Sabre Industries. And the letter had indicated that in the event of a structural failure, let's say, that the tower would bend and not collapse. And at previous meetings, the Plan Commission had expressed some concerns that the letter did not indicate where the bending would occur and that it could bend at such a height that it could hit a nearby structure. And I will defer to the Director of Public Works, Bill Balke, to just provide a little bit more of an update on all the steps that staff took to try to get answers for Plan Commission to address the concerns that they had identified.
Yes, since the Plan Commission meeting back in November, staff has reached out to a local engineering consulting firm that specializes in cell phone tower construction and design. We had asked them for the simple determination of, with the information that was given to us in the Plan Commission packet, the 109 pages of documents, was there anything in there that could confirm that the collapse or the failure of the pole would fall within the setbacks or within the right-of-way per the statutes? And they said that there was nothing in the calculations that indicated that. We then received another set of calculations from the tower consultant and provided those to our expert to review to determine whether or not those calculations would give us any information regarding where it would bend or where it would fail in the event of a collapse. And again, we did not have any information within those calculations that determine where it would bend or collapse. And so that's the information that we have, that we don't have any information with the information that we've received that we could determine where it would bend or collapse on the site. Thank you.
For that, Bill. So I'll just continue on the other items that we identified in the staff memo. So given that the application materials do not demonstrate compliance with Fitchburg Ordinance 22-346 or Fitchburg Ordinance 22-345-14, as I previously described, the applicant also does not comply with Fitchburg Ordinance 64-12210, which requires telecommunication facilities meet all standard setbacks and other requirements of the underlying zoning district. And then, so that kind of describes more the zoning and the telecommunication facilities items that we've identified, but then they are also requesting a conditional use permit. And per Fitchburg Ordinance 22-640C, which outlines the general standards for consideration of conditional uses, which are also listed in the staff memo in detail as to what those standards are. And as I understand it, the applicant has not demonstrated that the conditional use meets the standards listed in Fitchburg Ordinance 22-640C. So there we get more into the conditional use and the zoning and those questions. And then I want to move on a little bit to describe just the current property configuration on the lot that has changed since the application was first submitted. And this is also outlined in the memo as well. So on December 14th, the city assessor received a notification from Dane County that 4 new parcels had been created by the county. And the city assessor then notified planning staff of a potential land transfer between Lot 6, Assessor's Plat number 2, and Lot 5, Assessor's Plat number 2. And I'll just share my screen again just to give you guys an orientation. Let's see, make sure that worked okay. Can you guys all see that there?
We can.
Okay. So might not be sharing the right screen. There it is. Okay, so we have Lot 6, as I've shown before, here to the north. And then to the south, we have lot 5 of Assessor's Plat number 2. So you see what's happening there. So after we were notified of the creation of new parcels and the land transfer, we did ask the city assessor to review the deeds and the new parcels, and she confirmed that on October 21st, 2021, a portion of lot 6 and a portion of lot 5 were deeded by the property owner, Robert Parnell, to a new owner. And the city attorney also has a copy of that review from the city assessor confirming that that took place. And I don't have an exhibit really demonstrating it, but essentially the Robert Parnell deeded a sliver of land along Delview Drive that runs between lot 6 and lot 5, was deeded to the owner of lot 5, as well as the majority of lot 5 was sold, except for this little piece in the corner where you can kind of see an existing building was located there. So Robert Parnell retained this, sold a sliver here, as well as the majority of lot 5. And the reason that we're bringing this up for the Plan Commission to consider is because, at the time of the application being filed on September 21st, 2021, lot 6 was approximately 0.64 acres in size and was considered a pre-existing substandard lot because it was created before the city adopted our ordinance. It was actually created before the city incorporated. So this is a condition that we see throughout the city, that when the lot was created, it complied with the zoning that was in place at the time. And so you can, property owner has the right to develop their property as a pre-existing substandard parcel. However, the sale further reduced the lot size of lot 6 by approximately 0.1 acres. That's not exact, but it did reduce the lot size. And a couple of issues there is that, so this is actually a violation of our land division ordinance, Fitchburg Ordinance 24-2, which indicates that this property transfer was not exempt from our land division ordinance because lot 6 was now further reduced below the minimum lot size, and it's also created new lots as well. So in order to do something like that, they would have been required to submit a certified survey map to accomplish this, which they did not do. And lot 6 is no longer a pre-existing substandard parcel under Fitchburg Ordinance 22-4A because the parcel was not of record with the Register of Deeds on the effective date of the ordinance from which the chapter is derived in its current size or shape. So they have now altered the size and shape of lot 6 in 2021, and it's would no longer be considered a pre-existing substandard parcel because they've changed that size. So I know that's a lot of information also outlined in the staff memo, and just wanted to bring those all to the Plan Commission's attention. And they would apply to the telecommunications facilities permit, the conditional use, as well as the architectural design review as well.
All right, thank you very much. Then I think probably next would just be, I'm not sure who's here to represent the applicant. If there's any additional information they'd like to provide, we're happy to hear that information now. You're welcome to come up and provide that information for us.
One of the attorneys representing the applicant. Valerie, did the Plan Commission get what we submitted today or not?
It was forwarded to us at like 5 o'clock. I can't imagine any of us actually read through it.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem with this application from our perspective.
I just, when you're not on mic, I guess I just ask that you refrain from talking because the people online won't be able to hear you.
Mr. Mayor, my name is Michael Long. I'm co-counsel for the applicant. I work with Mr. Carter.
Can I ask, is this the same information that's in our packet, what you just handed us?
I handed what we forwarded to the city. I haven't seen your packet.
Yeah, so this information was provided this evening from the applicant team, and I did forward it to the Plan Commission this evening, but it hasn't been reviewed by staff as it was received today. But they've provided it in the hard copy form at this meeting.
And part of the problem here, members of the commission, is that we initially received a report from staff in October recommending approval and not raising these issues. So there were new issues raised in the latest report that came to us after the close of business on Friday. And they took time for us to research because they were given to us at the last minute. But we're prepared tonight to proceed and to address staff's comments. We had extended an opportunity to, once again, enlarge the shot clock if the commission wants 30 more days to consider. Otherwise, we're prepared tonight to proceed.
I guess that's the first question. I don't, if anyone up here wants to postpone this another 30 days, we can. I don't think there's any need to, but if anyone wants to, we can discuss that.
No, we already postponed it once, didn't we?
We did.
So
we get some more information, and we've gotten some more.
Fisher cut date.
So, all right. Seems like people would like to.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
One of the issues that's been raised by staff is the deficiency of the tower calculations and design report that was submitted I think was submitted on the 13th. And we have a representative of the manufacturer here this evening. He's dialed in. He can provide testimony. However, he's indicated to us that the way to probably best resolve any questions that the city's consultant might have is to allow for like a Zoom meeting or a conference call with all parties involved to better explore and to better address and to better understand the issues that are being raised by the city's consultant.
But our consultant is on the line tonight, or our engineer of the tower is on the line tonight and can address the comments that were made by Rainmaker and Associates, who's the consulting firm that the city had reached out to. So we are prepared to address that, and I'm prepared to walk through the application. So let's do that. The city's essentially heard, the city's population is close to 30,000 people. You've heard in this case from 5 parcels who object to the tower. The first parcel at 2877 Glacier Parkway has articulated that the tower is inappropriate in a residential area, and they've articulated health concerns. The federal government has said you can't consider health concerns. And our position on the residential nature of the tower is that state and federal law do not prohibit towers from being located in residential districts, nor does your own code, because this tower is a conditional use within that district. The second property owner at 2862 Glacier Valley is Mr. Blaney. The record should show that Mr. Blaney, and in your packet is his solicitation of his property, which he promotes as being only 600 yards away, as being appropriate for the tower. So if our position is that if the tower is appropriate on Mr. Blaney's property, which is 600 yards away, it's certainly appropriate on the property that's before you tonight. Mr. Blaney.
Could you explain that? I don't understand your reasoning.
Mr. Blaney's property is across the street from this property.
600 yards away?
Yep.
Okay.
I think let's not interrupt. There's a fallacy of logic there, but let's let him finish instead of interrupting. Let's let him.
But I think it's important that the record reflect that one of your objectors has solicited both the mayor and the applicants to locate this tower on their property. That's certainly a motivator because presumably Mr. Blaney's looking for compensation, and Mr. Blaney owns multiple rental properties throughout Dane County. Mr. Blaney's tenant appeared before you, encouraging the same thing, to look at another spot. So that's property 2. Property 3 is 2849 Glacier Valley. And that property owner stated at the public hearing, and I quote, that what we're looking to do is lawful yet unethical. In quoting again, it's legal, but it's stupid. That property owner then submitted photos to the Plan Commission of different towers on fire and falling over, and towers that don't look anything like the tower that's being proposed. Hopefully, the commission figured that out and doesn't weigh those photos in its decision tonight. The 4th property owner, 2886 Delview, simply said they don't want it in a residential area. And the 5th property owner was the owner who purchased the adjoining property, said she didn't know that this tower was going in when the house was purchased and that it wasn't appropriate in a residential area. Those are your public objections that you have tonight. We see 4 issues beyond that with the staff report, and we've identified 4 issues. The first issue is how this application has advanced before the city, and the change in the planner's recommendation and some of the predetermined biases that some of you have expressed on the record. We're asking tonight for a fair vote on this site. I think that it's important, in light of the staff report, to walk through exactly what we offered and what we didn't offer in this instance. We were before you before, and you said you needed additional information, additional engineering information. Plan Commissioner Kinney suggested that we bring our engineer to the hearing, and we've done that tonight. I've had numerous conversations with your city attorney. I have never talked to the Director of Public Works, nor has anyone else in our office, nor has any representative of the applicant ever had a communication with your Director of Public Works. So I can't speak to the representations he gave, but I can tell you my history with your city attorney and with the consultants that the city never even engaged on this site. And staff didn't tell you that tonight. Here's the history. The city attorney's not an engineer, I'm not either. But she developed a list of items that she requested from our engineer. And we talked about those. We talked about them in early November. And on November 10th, I suggested to your city attorney that the tower manufacturer and the city's consultant get together and talk and answer whatever questions, have an exchange of information. That suggestion was refused, and this is documented in the email communications that you have. It's all there, what I'm telling you now, black and white, paper trail. So at that same time, November 10th, I supplied additional design standards to the city attorney that I thought responded to her questions. So contrary to what was represented in your staff report, you'll see there's an email of November 10th where additional information was provided by our office and by the tower manufacturer. The city attorney responds on November 12th And we have another dialogue on that day where I reiterate, I think it would be best if the city's consultant picks up the phone and talks to the tower manufacturer. But that doesn't occur. On November 15th, the city attorney emails me again, and that's in your packets, suggesting that there's so many issues with this site that we bump the shot clock to the end of January. Now, the city's taking a different position, which we respect, but I think the record should be clear in that regard, because it's also our position, given the city's appeal mechanism from tonight's proceeding, that we have to go before the Common Council to get a final decision. And the shot clock in this case expires tomorrow. We were offering, and we offered as recently as this week, to extend out that shot clock. So that was November 15th. November 16th, I asked the city attorney, again to clarify, what items the consultant still needed for review. And on that day, I asked for the first time for the name of the city's consultant. And the city attorney responds to me, and again, this email is in your packet, that, quote, she didn't recall the name off the top of my head, and I'm not near my computer right now. A reasonable person would believe then that the city had, in fact, engaged a consultant. Maybe not, maybe I'm not reasonable, but that's what I believe. Then we went round and round. From November 18 through November 29th, where I was asking the city attorney for the name of the consultant, and she wouldn't provide it. Finally, on December 13th, we provided another certified engineering report to the city attorney. And I said, I think that this satisfies your inquiry. The city attorney responds the next day on December 14th. Again, these emails are in your file. And she discloses that the consultant hasn't been retained. She also asks, at that time, for a call between the city's consultant and the tower manufacturer. I had suggested that 6 weeks earlier, and she finally concedes on December 14th. Then things get a little more interesting, because we had planned, suspecting that there is bias on behalf of the Plan Commission toward this application, to bring in an expert consultant at this hearing to weigh the opinion of the city's consultant and the tower manufacturer. And we had reached out to Rainmaker and Associates. And one day after, we're identified that the city has a potential consultant, Rainmaker contacts us, and we have a call with Rainmaker, and Rainmaker reveals that they have a conflict because the city had approached Rainmaker. Rainmaker also revealed that they advised the city that there were no problems with the tower design and that the city wanted standards for the tower to withstand a hurricane. And they advised the city that the state building code and their municipal code didn't contain those standards and they couldn't enforce them. We offered on December 16th, the following day, to facilitate a phone conversation with the city's consultant. We never heard back from the city attorney, and I assume that's because the city knew that their consultant wasn't going to give enough for this new staff report coming out to say that the tower posed a hazard. So we've got our tower design folks here tonight, and they can tell you how this tower was designed to fall and how it will fall. You have no evidence to the contrary. We believe and we maintain that we supplied you with everything that we were required to do under statute. And the city sat and it didn't engage a consultant. The city was less than forthright, I think, with us in terms of whether a consultant was actually engaged. And it did nothing. In fact, it got information that it thought the Plan Commission didn't want to hear. And so therefore, stopped the discussion on having Sabre, the tower manufacturer, talk with the consultant. So that really leads into, I said I was going to clarify some concerns with the Plan Commission, or the staff report, and that really led into the fall zone issue. And Attorney Long is here and can address that in greater detail when I'm finished. But I want to touch on this lot and the setback issue. We disagree. And your assessor who made this determination isn't even here tonight to supplement the record. We disagree with her position as to what was transferred or when. We first learned about this argument after business last Friday. We believe there's no basis in the record for it. It wasn't identified earlier, and I think it's a red herring argument. We also disagree that 2 lots exist on that property. We disagree, for the reasons set forth in our letter, with staff's interpretation of that ordinance. But even if staff is correct, you've got a survey in front of you that shows, if you want 2 different zoning parcels and you read staff's arguments, the tower meets all of your setbacks, all of them. So you can fit it, not an issue. Finally, conditional use standards. Mr. Kinney, you went on and said that we couldn't show that the tower would not impact property values. So I'm representing to you tonight, part of the reason for our request for an adjournment is we've engaged Valbridge to provide an appraisal. Who's Valbridge? They're the largest independent valuation service in the US. Their initial opinion is that tower isn't going to impact anyone's property values. Report won't be ready until January. We can hold the record open if you see fit. I fully expect you won't. But that's Valbridge's position. The city hasn't presented any evidence beyond speculation of lay people as to property values. We also have a study in your packet that was commissioned by Verizon, and an independent entity conducted the study that further drives home the fact that this tower isn't going to impact property values. Finally, the best person from the city's perspective who could address property values didn't come to the meeting tonight. Your appraiser could certainly present evidence of other towers in the community where people have come forward and said that their property value has been diminished. There's no one that the city has to present that. So the record is void of any evidence that property values are impacted. As to the remaining conditional use standards, I think we meet them all. Standard number 1, that the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the conditional use will not be detrimental or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. Tower manufacturer is here and can address public safety, public health. Second, your ordinance says that the conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially reduce and impair property values. I've discussed property values. On the issue of use and enjoyment, you've designated towers as a conditional use in this zoning district. Your third criteria for conditional use permits is that the establishment of the conditional use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. And our response is the proposed use certainly will support development. It's going to promote bridging the digital divide, providing wireless services, internet, things like that. Number 4, 5, and 6, I'm going to take together because they clearly don't apply. 4, that adequate utilities, access road, drainage, and/or necessary facilities have been or are being provided. 5, that adequate measures have been taken or will be taken to provide ingress and egress, so designed as to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. And 6, that the conditional use shall, in all other respects, conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located. Clearly, we fulfill those standards. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague to talk a little bit more about the fall zone. But it's our position tonight that we've met the standards under the applicable portions of your telecom ordinance. Some of them are invalid due to the enactment of the state statute, but those that remain valid, we've fulfilled. We've fulfilled your conditional use requirements. We've fulfilled the requirements of the state statute, and we've fulfilled the requirements of federal law pertaining to this application. Mr. Long.
Thank you. With us this evening is a gentleman by the name of Robert Beacom from Sabre Industries. Mr. Beacom, can you hear us okay? He called in earlier. His number showed up before. But for some reason he had indicated that he had spoken out, but apparently nobody could hear him before. Oh, okay. Okay, one of them is Mr. Beacom.
Off.
I'm sorry?
If he can hear us, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not working, and it's not going to, fortunately, we can't help you.
How does a remote caller unmute?
It's on his end. We can't do it. It's on his end.
Oh, it's on his end, okay. Well, let me just see if he...
We'll have to keep moving on if he's having technical difficulties.
Okay, he said he wasn't sure if anyone could hear him. He tried identifying himself twice with no luck. No. And he said his phone was not on mute on either try.
Yeah, so he's having some technical difficulties on his end, unfortunately.
Okay, well, in a nutshell, what in the planner's report, it was discussed that, and the city opined that when they showed the design report prepared by the tower manufacturer, that the report failed to identify how the tower would buckle or bend in the event of a failure. And the engineer, Mr. Beacom, we spoke to him yesterday, and he indicated to us that that is simply not the case. And he pointed out, for purposes of your consultant, where in the report it's indicated that the so-called bend or the hinge, where that is engineered in the report, or where that's engineered on the tower. And Mr. Beacom has indicated to us that that occurs at approximately 54 feet on the tower. And that's an area where basically it's engineered that in the event of a failure, that's where the tower is going to bend. And he's also indicated to us that it's going to bend in a parabolic fashion. So it's not going to snap. It's not going to a full collapse at the base. It's going to bend at 54 feet. So it's basically going to arc over. And from that point of view, you know, we sort of take issue with what the city's consultant opined, because per the designer, it's clearly in the report that that information was there for review. And so we want to set the record straight that indeed there is, that the tower design does show that it has been engineered to fold over. Second of all, Mr. Beacom also indicates that in responding to some of the additional questions that the city had relative to an event of a tower failure, the first question was if there was a failure, all possible locations where the tower would fail. And Mr. Beacom indicates in his answer to that question that the most likely location would be at the point where the combined stress ratio is maximum. And that is that 54-foot, basically at a height of 54 feet above ground was where the tower would bend. And that is in the report. In addition to that, another question that the city attorney and the city's consultant had was additional detail from the manufacturer that if there would be a failure to the monopole, how the monopole shaft would bend and how far over property lines, if at all, the monopole may end up in an event of a failure. And what Mr. Beacom says is that the shaft would bend in a parabolic manner, and that being the case, it's not like this is going to hit the ground. It's not going to, because it's bending at 54 feet in an arc, it's not going to hit a property line or across a property line. It's not going to be at risk of hitting the right-of-way based on the current setbacks, assuming that Lot 6 is indeed a separate lot. In essence, a parabolic bend of the tower is not going to end up on another, the tower is not going to end up on another property, and it's not going to end up in the road.
Scott, do you have a?
Oh.
Mr. Beacom, are you able to speak? Or I guess you can speak. Can we hear you? You want to try again?
Rob, can you hear us?
He can probably hear us, but unfortunately, if he's trying to speak, we can't hear him again.
Speaker, do you have his phone number?
Yeah, hold on.
We have another way to get him on.
If you guys can keep moving, you've been
Do you have his phone
to the
number?
point.
Yeah.
We got a lot to do, think.
Yeah. Well, in the absence of Mr. Beacom's testimony, he's addressed the questions that the city had, and he's provided the information that the city was seeking about the tower bending in the event of a tower failure. And then he also pointed out where in the report, which is page 11 of the report, where the designed hinge or the designed bend point is actually engineered into the tower. And that's all in the letter that we provided today. However, if the city's engineer has additional questions or concerns or anything related to the design of the tower, we still think the best course of action would be for the engineer that designed the tower to meet with the consultant retained by the city to work out any questions and differences that may result from two engineers looking at the same set of data. The key, and the folks from Sabre have indicated to us that that's how they typically work, is that it's not in a vacuum. They collaborate with a consulting engineer working for a municipality to basically address concerns, and they do it face-to-face or, on the phone or via Zoom. So.
Is that all?
Yep, in the event that, let me just, if I may, and I do apologize here. This is one of the concerns that I had about, obviously, doing a remote type of testimony. But let me just see if it's possible, if I can call him and put him on a speakerphone.
If he's going to say the same thing you just did, I don't know that
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
necessary.
it will.
Spent a lot of time
Sure.
already hearing from you.
I get you. And if possible, if we can hold the record open on Mr. Beacom supplementing anything that I just did in offering a summary of what he was saying, we would appreciate that, because certainly I'm not an engineer, and without his testimony, I think he can perhaps offer more and provide more detail if that's what the city's looking for.
Well, it will depend on if the Planning Commission wants to keep this open or make a decision tonight.
We understand.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you. We got some residents that will come up in a minute, so you can take a seat. Lisa, is there anything additional before we get some feedback from the community? Oh, we can't hear you.
One
Go ahead.
point
Yeah, go ahead.
regarding the property transfer that occurred. So the reason that it was included in the memo that was finalized on Friday, December 14th, is because on December 14th, the city assessor was notified by Dane County through the regular process that they always follow through an automated email notifying her of the new parcels that were created. And then in addition to that, they had a failure for their online mapping where the parcel layer was down. So we weren't actually able to review the new parcel layer immediately. So then when the city assessor was able to review it, that's when we met with staff, and it was happening, as we're finalizing the staff memo. And that is generally how we, share information with applicants, is by providing the staff memo the Friday before the meeting. And just from a timeline perspective, per the deed, the transfer occurred in October, but the deed itself wasn't recorded with Dane County until November 16th, which is why Dane County then didn't create the new parcel until December, because that's how their own internal timeline works there. So just wanted to provide a little bit more feedback on why and when that information was shared.
All right, thank you.
And the city assessor also has that email from our city assessor, Amy Mercer, that she can distribute paper copies to the Plan Commission as well.
Right.
And the assessor is the one who reviewed that land sale. And it looks like Bill Bulkey has his hand raised, so he may want to provide some comments as well.
Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the process that we went through to attempt to retain a consultant to review the documents that were provided to us. After Plan Commission had asked us, to verify where the tower would fall, I didn't have the expertise in that. So I went on the internet and looked for some local, construction companies that specialize in tower communications to be able to do a review of the documents that we had received in the Plan Commission packet. So I had sent that to several consultants. Several had declined to do a review, but Raymaker did say that, they could look at the documents and provide us with some feedback on whether or not the information was within there. And then there was, as was mentioned, the back and forth to try to get more information. And we did go in and say, is there enough information after the second submittal was provided to us to do that? And shortly after that, our consultant that we were working with said that they didn't feel comfortable with going forward with making a recommendation, but from the information that was provided, we did not have enough information to indicate where the tower would bend or break, and that was, and that they didn't want to go forward anymore. So that's why we did not retain. We were asking the consultant to please provide us with what information do you need to review and make that decision. And when we got the final letter that said that they were no longer interested in going forward, that's why we did not retain them. But they did say that the information that was provided up to that point was not enough to make that determination. So that's what we had going forward.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and our city attorney just handed out the letter from Ramaker and also some information from our city assessor on the lots themselves, and provided with the applicant with those as well. All right, let's go now to public comments. And we've got a number of people here, so I will open the public hearing. We've got a number of people that would like to speak. First, we have Carson Klund, and after that is Don Johnson. So Carson, if you'd like to come up, and just a reminder for the public that we do ask that you keep the comments to 3 minutes or less, please.
I can't do that, but I'll try to do the best I can because I prepared for it. And then but first I'd like to comment on things that came out. Can you hear me with this?
We can.
Okay. First of all, Mr. Blaney, I know Mr. Blaney well. He does not need the money, and that's not why he wanted the change. He wanted the change because directly from his front door, he would be looking directly at the tower. That's number one. Secondly, the only reason that 5 householders showed up here was because the letter that was sent by the city of Fitchburg was such a limited distance that there were only 5 homes that were in that area. They all showed up, is what he meant. When he talked about health concerns, you can't consider health concerns. I think that should be looked into because my BS meter kind of went off at that time. And lastly, about the property values. When you go online like I have and you've researched all this, there's a plethora of articles about property values. And the majority of them are that property values do go down considerably. And in fact, the National Association of Realtors says that if you're close to a cell tower, they'll go down 20%. Okay, so now I'll go to my presentation. And I'm going to pass this one out after I finish. A recent survey by the National Institute of Science, Law, and Public Policy, the NISLAPP, this is from the National Realtors Association, found that 94% of homeowners are not interested in looking for a home near cell towers. Of the 1,000 people who were represented in this survey, 79% said that they would, under no circumstances, would they ever purchase or rent a property within a few blocks of a cell tower or antenna, and more than 90% said that they were concerned about the increasing number of cell towers encroaching on residential areas. There's an abundance of articles and studies and opinions relative to EMF's effect on both property values and health. Relative to health, they vary from minimal problems to scary scenario. But the articles published with quantitative data from physicians and epidemiologists that have science-based are alarming and lean heavily toward negative effects from electromagnetic radiation. I'll point out one, read about this one. It's only 2 paragraphs, and then I'll be done. This is from A New Paradigm in EMF Science. In 1975, Dr. Alan Frey found that microwave radiation opened the blood-brain barrier in rats. The blood-brain barrier gives protection from pathogens, toxins, and heavy metals. Since that finding, European studies found biological effects from EMFs to include sperm damage, nervous system disruptions, cardiac ECG changes, endocrine system malfunctions, increased brain glucose levels, but most important was the concern that it causes DNA damage, which can lead to cancer. The study was quickly attacked by the leading industry-friendly scientists, resulting in a media storm. After a full review and investigation, the research results stand. And in 2012, the Hamburg District Court in Germany forced Dr. Lecce to recant his allegations, and he was convicted of defamation and libel. The industry statement now reads, and I quote, "In our opinion, all scientific studies have alluded to or shown high probability to cancer, but they don't show an absolute 100% direct link. Therefore, there's no real proof."
Personally, need to
almost done.
We need to keep moving.
However, since the early 2000s, cell tower cluster studies reveal statistics that show 300% increase in cancer around these antenna sites. And in 2021, this year, 230 scientists from 41 countries called the World Health Organization for an environmental review. Finally,
We need to keep
you can put down your cell phone, you can turn off your microwave, but the cell tower emits continual bombardment.
Okay. Thank you. Dan, you are next. Dan Johnson. Dan. And then after that will be Norma Johnson.
The cell tower is not causing me trouble. I'll try to speak as clearly as I can. Right now, I'm a little PO'd.
If you could, yeah, just get the mic a little closer, that'd be great.
Right.
Wisconsin Statute 640404 restricts people's right to address grievances, to question or challenge ideas that might damage the general welfare. Expect more of this, as it appears that these tower companies will use these regulations to get their wishes, which means that if this tower is actually built, not on paper, as it was done about 2 years ago on antennasearch.com, it means that any Fitchburg neighborhood, and this means yours as well, stands as a helpless target for further commercial development at the whim of powerful corporations. However, the appeals court in Cedarburg has already shot down one tower permit application, and they base their decision on many of the same tenets we have been talking about for the last 4 months, not a few weeks, 4 months. That is, the tower does not belong in a quiet, established residential neighborhood, no matter how desperately these guys want the money. And in addition, would adversely affect the value of the land and property. Permit denied. Words that need to be spoken tonight. This idea never was a good one, and never will be. It's in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I don't care which way it's bending. I want them to ask the people in Mayfield or whatever it is in Kentucky what happened to those cell towers. They're all down. What if they went like this or went like this? I don't think it matters. They're down. They forget to take into consideration Mother Nature doesn't give a damn about the engineering rules. It just wrecks stuff. And the damage we would see would be from tornadoes. I yield the best of my time to my colleague.
All right, thank you. Norma, you are next, and after that is Jim Markart. Go ahead, Norma. Yep.
Good evening. I'm Norma Johnson. I'm not an architect. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a builder. I just happen to live across the street from where this tower is supposed to be built. And I think there's an important thing that hasn't been discussed here, and I'd like to bring it up. It might take me 10 minutes, but these gentlemen had almost an hour, so I think we can do it. I wanted to be a vet when I grew up, and then I discovered that they weren't allowing women in vet school at that time. So I made it a point that I was always going to be concerned about wildlife, plants, animals. And we saw an ad in the newspaper, and within 3 hours, we had visited the lots and bought them. They were across the street from a big marsh. We like to refer to it as the Pittsburgh Zoo. And it allowed me to be concerned about every kind of creature that exists in this area. When I finally found out that they were thinking of building a tower, I wondered what would happen to all these creatures, plants, people. And I discovered that a review of 113 studies from reviewed publications indicated that the development and reproduction of birds and insects were totally destroyed. And in fact, in some studies, 70% of the bees never return to their hives. And we all have heard about the effect of bees on our farming and our food supply. And the conclusion of these 113 studies was that there are reasonable grounds for believing that microwave radiation constitutes an environmental and health hazard. At the present, there is a significant lack of funding to advance studies. But what they have decided is that since the studies earlier from the FCC are 50 years old, the requirements, radio frequency radiation injures trees around the mobile home-based stations. The science of the electronic total environment in a 2020 study said that it was causing all kinds of trouble for agriculture and human, and that it should be stopped and it should be looked into and it should be changed. From the Health Trust, the electromagnetic radiation standards used by the FCC to continue to be based on heating, a criterion that is now 30 years old and out of date. A retired U.S. Fish and Wildlife biologist stated, "The race to implement 5G and the push by the FCC to improve the frequencies are very troubling and downright dangerous. There are currently well over 500 scientific peer-reviewed papers addressing the impact of non-thermal radiation on animals, insects, birds, and humans."
Norma, if you could wrap up, that would be great.
I'll be done shortly.
Okay, great.
I live across the street from this. I have a husband with a pacemaker. It can be totally destroyed by this. When there is so much open land around here, for the life of me, I can't understand why they are asking for 6/10 of an acre to be approved when the recommendation is 2 acres. We live there. They don't. And we don't want the tower.
Thank you. All right, Jim Markhart, and after that is Jamie Thayer.
All right, I'm Jim Marquardt, the tenant at 2862 Glacier Valley Road. First, I want to thank you guys for looking into that zoning stuff that you guys have done that Valerie, I think it was brought up. That's stuff that us citizens, we're not privy to, and the fact that you guys took upon yourselves to look into that really makes me feel like our voice is at least being heard, which is nice. A few things I wanted to address. I know they spoke about me and Mr. Blaney talking about the location of the tower. One of the reasons we brought that up is not only if it was moved to 600 yards, it would be away from any roads, away from any structures. So if it did fall, that would be less of a concern. It'd also be buffered by a bunch of trees where the road and nearby houses wouldn't be able to see any of the tower the majority of the time when there's foliage on the trees. And as well as that, is my understanding that this, the cell tower company is legally obligated to specify why they picked their location and why other locations aren't allowed within the search radius. I don't know if they gave you that information, but being less than a quarter mile away and seemingly less effect on everybody's property value, which I think is silly, they think it won't. I think it should be addressed that they didn't explore that opportunity. Other issues, I know I brought it up in a different meeting. As recent as 2019, the town of Cedarburg denied a conditional use permit for a cell tower in a place that was zoned agricultural surrounding area of residential. That sounds very similar to what this is. They denied it. Of course, the cell tower sued them. The Wisconsin courts found it's 100% legitimate that they denied it because it clearly has an effect on property values, as well as it's detrimental to public welfare, and it's incompatible with the agricultural and residential uses of the adjacent land. It sounds like these guys are kind of trying to bully you guys into thinking you need to approve this, but I really think you guys are on the right track. You know what you're doing. Them not agreeing with you is not make them right, and I'm glad you guys are doing what you're trying to do and make sure this is right. And if you do have a bias, it's to protect the citizens that you're supposed to protect, so I applaud you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Jamie, you are next, and after that would be Lloyd Blaney.
Evening, Jamie there. So I have purchased the home at Robert Purnell's house, or the house right next to it. I am currently living there with my 2 small children. I had no indication that this cell tower was even it was never proposed to me. Robert had never mentioned anything about it. Again, like I said, I have 2 small children. I know that the health concerns are not necessarily a true factor. However, you can't prove that they're not. I mean, we're on the fence on both sides. After hearing their testimony, it only makes me more concerned when they're talking that it potentially can fall down at 54 feet, since my house is literally right there. I also have concern, as everybody else has talked about, the property value, the eyesore with it being in my backyard. Yet again, I did not have any knowledge of this being proposed or it being a possibility when I purchased the home. That's my fault, obviously. And with the survey being laid out, I think they had mentioned something to that that had to be done for the septic scenario. I don't know if that's relevant to anything. So I guess I'm just asking to have it put on other properties. I think they were saying Mr. Blaine had offered or suggested he has 2 or 3 different locations that could be proposed. So we all, as neighbors, can't see the reasoning behind why it would have to be in this particular location. And that's all I have to say, I guess.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Lloyd, you are next.
I'm Lloyd Blaney. I'm the guy at 2862 Glacier Valley. I don't live there anymore. I did live there for like 30 years. My son lives there now. That's Jimmy. I would like to point out that a lot of this talk that these gentlemen put on about the structural nature of this tower and engineering and all that stuff is irrelevant, because the rule or statute, I don't recall which one it is, that deals with cell towers talks about what happens if they fall over. It doesn't talk about what happens if they fold or telescope or bend or do any of the other stuff that these guys are talking about. If they don't like the law, they should do something about getting it changed instead of trying to get this body to go, oh yeah, that works for us. No, that isn't the way it should be. The other thing is they're anxious to denounce me as some sort of greedy landlord type, but the fact of the matter is that when they went about canvassing people to locations for this tower, they never talked to me, and the people that, by their own admission, the people that they did talk to didn't want anything to do with their tower. So why didn't they want to talk to me? Is it just because I'm a bad guy? I don't think so. I think it's just all about cost. And the idea of sticking this tower right there in this neighborhood that they're trying to characterize as not being residential is offensive. It's offensive because the only things in that neighborhood that aren't residential are my tree farm and this mess that Parnell has left behind his house. And he sold his house without telling this lady, the purchaser, that all this stuff was going on. Actually, I think he ought to hope this doesn't go through. But the long and the short of it is that it would not reflect very well on this community to put that tower right there where every passerby is going to see the thing, where the neighbors will have to put up with it until doomsday. It is offensive. They could put the thing on the hillside behind on my farm, and nobody would ever see it most of the time, whether they were driving by or living there. So I'm just completely flummoxed that we keep going through this business. This whole thing should be shot down right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And that's all I have for people who want to speak on this matter. So I can close the public hearing. And what's that? You have a question about zoning?
He needs the mic if he's.
So the question is there special zoning? And we'll talk about that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, we're going to talk about the zoning as part of that. So I don't think there's a need for a closed session. Just talking with staff. I mean, it's there if possible, but there's nothing I don't think that we would talk about in public that we can't, or in private that we can't say in public. So my recommendation is that we don't go into closed session unless someone disagrees with that. But I see some people who are agreeing with me. So we can go to discussion and possible action on E for the permits. Is there anything, Valerie, that you'd like to add before we get into that?
Yeah, I do just want to advise the Plan Commission. I think one of the things the applicant has pointed out, and that is that it is inappropriate for this body to consider whether there's other appropriate locations for the structure, and that is true, that is in the statute. And so I would encourage this body to focus on on other factors that I think are appropriate for this body's consideration.
All right. Then I can open up to the Planning Commission members. Rich, do you?
Yeah, I got a lot to say.
All right.
Surprise. I know what you just said, but by the way, 600 yards is a third of a mile. It's not just a blink or a little cross. But anyhow, you mentioned that in your, I think it was Mr. Carter, right? You said something about the previous sites have not changed the value of the housing. Would you do me a favor, and could you email me or maybe the commission all property in Dane County and say the last 20 years where a tower has been put in? We have access to Access Dane. We can see property values before and after the installation if we want to question what you had said.
So are you holding the record open for that? Oh, sir.
Well,
we're not going back and forth. We're not going back and forth.
No, okay, if we hold it open, would you please do that? Second of all, I'm a little surprised, the 54-foot height, that sounded like it was a design thing, sort of like a shear pin on a snow blower. It's designed to break there, so instead of any other place. But if it's a design feature, why don't any of the other engineers, why aren't they aware of it? I find that kind of strange. It's a secret design feature, I guess. I thought that was strange. I think, well, we'll continue later. You get the rest.
Sure. Okay. Do you want me to go? You want to go?
Well, I just have a couple of quick things,
Yeah.
Comments, really. I don't understand why the 54-foot hinge, whatever it might be, that's in there that Raymaker couldn't find in the report. When this issue was brought up in October, I can't understand why the applicants didn't bring this information forward in November at the meeting. So that didn't happen, which is confusing to me. And the other thing that I really don't understand is they seem to be asking for more time to provide information with regard to property values. That issue was also brought up in October, and here we are in December, and you want more time until January to do that. Again, I just don't think that makes any sense. I mean, if you had some information that you could have provided on that, you've had 2 months to do it, and we've got nothing. So that's all for now.
Right. Yeah, I know I've got a few things, if you're right, and I'll go to Stephen and then Randy. A few important things for me. One is that there are 2 parcels here, regardless of what the applicant wants to believe. There are 2 parcels, and this doesn't meet the setbacks on those parcels. They were never combined like maybe the owner wanted to, but they were never combined, and they have different zoning. And, you know, I think that then really leads into this selling of some of the property. And as we know, and it would be done for plenty of other properties, if you sell part of what was non-conforming, it has to change, and then it has to be brought up to conforming standards. Because that lot was changed, it has to then change that zoning. And to me, that's the biggest thing where, you know, Purnell didn't do that. Well, that's unfortunate, because now this doesn't meet that. And we would bring it up to zoning, would say, well, no, it's not going to be something like this project could take place on. So to me, that's the biggest one of all these, is that it needs to get rezoned, and it's a violation of our ordinances right now. And I'm pretty sure that we wouldn't have something that would allow something like this on that property now that that lot was changed. I think that, you know, there's some discrepancy on if the tower collapses, if it really won't fall on other structures. I think that's still a concern, regardless of what, you know, their expert wants to say, because our staff is not agreeing with that at this point in time. They haven't heard that. And then, other than that, I think, you know, just because of all these things, I don't see a reason to delay this anymore. I think that is something that I'm ready to reject tonight. So I'll let other people speak, though. I got Stephen and then Randy after that.
Sure, so I think I'm going to take us back to October. This body's main concern was with the engineer's assessment that this fall would not impact any of the surrounding areas. The question that was raised is, how can we say that? The applicant had said that we have an engineer's sworn testimony to that effect. We asked for more information. All of this stack of paper that you have provided us, which is a very informative back and forth between two attorneys, are two people talking at each other like this. It's incredibly frustrating to read, because the city has asked for basic documentation to take to a third party for us to get an independent assessment done. And instead, the applicant has said, who is that person? We want to contact them directly. That's not what we are asking for or had asked for. And I'm speaking on behalf of our city attorney here, and maybe I'm overstepping it, but I don't think that's appropriate as an applicant to decide what you want to provide to whom and when and where. We have asked for more information because we as a body could not understand how you can guarantee that a 125-foot piece of metal won't fall 100 feet in any which direction if it snaps at 5 feet from the base. That's what we wanted to understand. We asked for something beyond just our engineer has attested to this. That information should have been easily given to us as a city to then give to an independent review so that there wasn't this muddying of the water. What you had asked for, and when I'm reading through all of this, I've literally been reading it since you gave it to me, is this request to just sort of have a backdoor. We don't want to give it to the city, we want to give it to the independent consultant. That seems backwards to me as an applicant, and to make that as your main priority of your argument, I think is flawed. And the fact that you've had 2 months to prepare, and instead what you tried to do was buy time between the two attorneys going back and forth. That's frustrating, because that just is a lack of progress all around. I would love to have learned more about this 54-foot. What does that mean? What happens when a tornado comes through? Does it still act at 54 feet? What happens if something comes up from the base of it, like somebody had mentioned here? I would have loved to have understood that better, because some of these other arguments that we hear that I will agree with the applicant are not valid, and we cannot consider them. My main concern going into this from October, I think the main voice of opposition that we all had as a body was about that fall radius and what that really meant, and we still do not have anything beyond our engineer guarantees it's at 54 feet. That's unfortunate. And then the other thing that I do want to make sure to mention is that in all of this, we've been dealing with this for 2 months, we've extended the deadline as two shared bodies. If I as a property owner wanted to build on a 3-season porch and I was going to encroach my minimum setbacks, and I came with hand drawing, what would this body do? Say no. This feels woefully unprepared for us to actually take action on and really understand and be educated on. and there's all this infighting and back and forth, going back and forth. I just feel like this is an incomplete application and that this was just unprepared. I don't feel like I've gotten the same level of information and context that we get for 3-season porch additions or a lot line separation. We get such detail, ADRs. Look at the level of details that we question on whether or not a Quick Trip gas canopy should be green or white or red. We sit here and debate that as a group, and yet we're talking about a 125-foot tower, and we're sitting here still going, I don't know if it's gonna fall or what happens and what if. That's a complete lack of information, and that's really irritating.
Randy, go ahead.
I'm not sure if I can follow that. I'm in total agreement. I have some real concerns with the 125 foot. 50 foot or 54 foot? There's nothing to say that's not going to fall from that base. So I need additional information as well. And the mayor is correct. Those parcels should have been cleaned up, and we are in violation. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Emily, go ahead.
I would agree with you guys. I am really concerned that, the parcels are not cleared up, that we're not in alignment with city ordinances. You said that the tower, if it was going to bend, would likely bend at 54 feet. Like that was the most likely place, but if it's the most likely, then there's other places too. And so I think, to everyone's point, we needed that additional information so we could see, all right, so where are the other places where it could, potentially bend or break, and what are the implications for that? Thinking about like conditional use permits, which we'd have to approve for this to go forward, there's the comfort and there's the overall safety of the neighborhood, and I feel like right now we cannot guarantee that, and so I'm very much against this.
So we have kind of three.
Do we need to do?
We have three avenues from here. One is we can postpone it another month. It sounds like the applicant is willing to delay the shot clock another month. We can approve it or we can deny it. Those are kind of our three options tonight.
Since it's a trifecta between the ordinance, the resolution, the telecommunications, the conditional use, they need all of it to get anywhere. So can we just vote on all three at one shot?
Well, we have to do it in separate
We do?
motions, yeah. Yep. Ed, did you want to say something? I thought you had your hand raised.
I didn't. I guess what I'd like to ask Valerie to address, some of the statements that were made tonight. There seems to be some disagreement as to the discussion that occurred between you and them and with regard to our consultant, our engineering consultant. And maybe you can just clear some of that up for us.
Yeah, I can briefly address that, but I do think the applicant has provided, I haven't checked if it's a complete record of all of our emails. I guess I would let them speak to that, but certainly there's some back and forth. And the short of it is that we did request at the direction, after consultation with Public Works and at the direction of this body, we did, as I understand, Bill Balke, our city engineer, did request some possible consultants, or tried to identify some possible consultants. They initially reached out to a firm that said, we don't really do that kind of work, but if we did, this isn't enough to review, you're gonna need more info. And so at that point, I communicated that to the applicant's attorney. After identifying a potential consultant, we did request that additional information because, again, that was the information we received. There was quite a bit of back and forth. It is true that at one point the applicant said we'd prefer to handle it directly, and our concern was that we wanted to make sure that the process remained impartial, and so we said, please provide the data first, and certainly if there's other information or clarifying information, then at that point we would do that. And I think, as I mentioned, the rest of it is more or less in the communications. If there's any specific question, I'm certainly happy to address that.
Well, the letter from Rainmaker seems to indicate that there wasn't the information in the application materials.
That's
Answer the
correct.
question we're asking.
Yeah, that's so that you have a copy of the letter in front of you. And basically, they were provided with the initial application, which they had reviewed and said, no, this is not sufficient information. The attorney for the applicant at one point said, you have everything you need. Why are you asking for more? The reason I was asking for more was because Public Works told me, no, we don't have enough. They did provide on December 13th an additional 25-page structural design. We immediately forwarded that to Raymaker, who then responded and said, this still is not what we need. What it says is that it meets some, appropriate code or industry standards or what have you, but not necessarily, doesn't really provide us with the calculations or the assumptions that they use when they calculate the fall zone. And so we'd ask them to provide this letter just so that this body would have something to review rather than a string of emails.
I just want to reiterate again, I think concerns about where this tower is going to fall is important, and I think is piece of this. But even more to me is that this property changed. It has this really old zoning on it, and that's okay as long as the lot stays the same. The lot changed. It didn't change much, but it changed. And as soon as it does that, then they have to come here and get it rezoned. I don't think that we would have approved a zoning that would allow this use. And so that's, to me, is the biggest thing. There's some other things that are also important. But to me, that's the biggest thing, is that as soon as you change this lot that's non-conforming and is this old zoning, then you have to come in and get that fixed. And we would change the zoning on it. I think, I can't, say yes or no, but I think.
Either way, it wasn't done, so.
Right.
Well, and if I may clarify,
go ahead, Bonnie.
as I understand, and I'll let the interim zoning administrator speak to that, but rural development zoning, which is the zoning that this Lot 6 is currently designated as, is a retired zoning designation. So really, no new parcels can be rezoned to rural development. It certainly, any kind of rezone would require a new zoning designation, regardless of any kind of proposed use and regardless of anything else. That is just not a zoning designation we use any longer.
Lisa, is there anything that you want to add at all?
Yeah, so that statement is correct, that we don't rezone property to rural development, or it's not our standard practice. I will just say that the land sale or the alteration of the boundaries of the property is in some ways different from the zoning lot question. So we do have properties in the city where a single legal property has two zoning designations. And that's more typically when you hear the phrase zoning lot, because you could have one property with two zoning lots. But you also can have a property with one zoning lot, right? So lot 6 exists as a property, and now the boundaries have changed, but the zoning still covers the same area, and lot 6 is still zoned rural development. So any structure in rural development has to comply with setbacks in that district. We measure that to the property line, and the rear property line itself has not changed due to the sale. So we were asking for them to demonstrate that the structure complies with the setbacks in the rural development zoning district, which is lot 6, assessor's plot number 2. Just want to clarify that.
Thank you.
So to summarize, we have issues with setbacks. We have a separate issue with the change in the size of the lot, which was illegal. And we have a third issue with the fall zone, which we're not confident that fall zone would allow us to find under the conditional use that there are no problems with public safety. I think that the applicant has failed to show that two of the requirements of the conditional use have been met. The first is that the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the conditional use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. I don't believe the applicant has shown that. Secondly, I don't believe the applicant has shown that the conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the neighborhood. I believe if they had information that would have supported their argument, they've had plenty of time to bring it forward and haven't done so.
Anyone else comment or anything like that? Or if not, a motion of some kind as well.
On that basis, I'm going to move denial of TFP 2408-21 and request that staff provide written notification to the applicant of the reasons for the denial.
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Rich. Any further comments before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor of denial, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is denied. All right, next is, along with this, is public hearing and consideration of conditional use permit request, CU 240921. I'll open the public hearing. I think everyone's kind of spoken to this already, so I don't think anyone else needs to say anything else, but we can. Seeing nothing, I'll close the public hearing. And is there any other comments by Planning Commission?
No, I'll move rejection of conditional use permit CU-2409-21.
Second.
Seconded by Randy. All in favor of denial, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is denied. And then we also have an ADR as well for 2863 Delview Drive.
Which is moot.
And then, actually, do we want to do a motion on that, do we? Or yeah, yeah, we do, okay, yeah, we do have to. do that.
And this one, I'm in an opinion of, I'm perfectly fine with the architectural design review. Right? I don't know that
I think that's part of, though, the fall would be part of the design.
the
though.
design, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I don't think you are.
In order to issue an architectural design review, the structure has to comply with the zoning district. So that includes the setback. So the same, yeah.
Same thing as applied.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, is there a motion on the ADR?
Then I'll move to approve, or deny the ADR at 2863 Delview Drive.
Second.
Seconded by Emily. All in favor of denying the ADR, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is also denied. All right, moving along to the next item. We have Fred DeVillers here for a few items here. First is the minor PDD modification. Fred, if you want to come up and kind of let us know where you're at right now, give us an update, that'd be great. Thank you for waiting.
Sure, no problem. There's not a whole lot to update on the fact that we had requested to modify the setbacks from 18 feet to 15 just to make a little extra room for additional architectural dormers and columns and just improve aesthetics to the CBRF building along Sassafras. This is on, right?
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
Yep, yeah. Yep.
I was expecting to hear it too. Sorry.
All right. Anything else? Or we can go do staff report?
That literally was the only thing that had changed.
All right. Lisa, would you like to do staff report, please?
Yeah, so this is a minor PDD modification to change the setbacks by 3 feet, as the applicant stated, to allow for some greater building articulation, I think primarily with the duplexes, to allow some encroachments and things like that. And staff don't have any concerns with that approach. I can give the staff report on all the items.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Yeah, items H, I, and J are related. They're all part of that inspiration at Swan Creek development. And I know that Fred can probably comment on this a little bit more as well. But so just a little bit of background. Plan Commission considered the architectural design review for the townhouse structures previously. And at that time, they indicated that they would approve the architectural design review with the condition that the final building materials be submitted to staff for review. And so when the plans were submitted to staff for review, staff noted that there were some changes in the color selection and the architectural materials. So I just didn't feel comfortable approving the ADR without having Plan Commission take a look at it. And the biggest difference there is, and pull it up, is primarily they switched from like a vertical vinyl on the second floor to a wider batten board style. So that has changed. I'm going to share my screen. It'll load. There it is. So as you can see here, this is a color rendering. This was provided before the meeting. This shows a more accurate colors than the rendering included in the packet. So you can see here, they have this gray material. They also have a lighter gray vinyl, then this gray stone, and this is that white batten board vinyl there. And then the back of the building will have the gray and the white as well, and then the side. So that's what the townhouses would look like in terms of color and design. And then moving on to the CBRF, the Plan Commission had previously considered the architecture design review for the senior housing component of the development and had just expressed and agreed with staff with just concerns about the quality of the design. So the applicant did, take those comments into consideration and I think addressed the concerns that were brought up at Plan Commission. So as you can see here, in this rendering at the top, they've added these more kind of prominent columns here. They've created more prominent gabling. They added the brick facade at different intersections here, and they also added a brick veneer along the bottom of the building. So I think those are definitely improvements from the previous architectural design review that was submitted. And I believe Fred may have some more comments and may have even provided building material samples if he was able to get those. So maybe Fred has some additional comments to share.
Sure. Well, I guess the CBRF rendering kind of speaks for itself, and Lisa did a great job of covering everything we've added to it. In regard to the townhome buildings, the goal is just to try to break up the monotony of the horizontal lines and add some board and batten. Plus, it's become a little bit popular. It's a for sale product. None of this is for rent, so we're trying to make something that's more attractive to the consumer as well. And so that's why we kind of added the vertical board and batten just to. Plus, you can get it in wider profiles, so it just makes it look a little bit less linear. The color change was just something that the realtors and the architect felt strongly about, giving it more of a modern, timely look versus something that's a little bit more dated in the rental products that's kind of in and around the area. And that was kind of the main reason for the changes.
Are those some material samples there? Yeah.
Because the rendering, unfortunately, the architect doesn't have, and he's really having challenges with his rendering software, taking the actual design and the colors from the CAD file and rendering it. And the amount of time he spent is commendable, but to me, it still didn't turn out too well. But so I brought in some of this just in case you did want to see it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You want me to just come up and you
if you want
pass
to
it
bring it
around?
up here or something like that, yeah, that'd be good. And while you're doing that, let's see, I don't see any public hearings necessary for these. Is there anything additional, Lisa, that you want to cover as we're looking at the materials?
Nothing additional, just the standard conditions that have carried over from the last staff memo, so nothing new there.
Okay, great. All right, as he's showing those around, other initial comments by anyone on Plan Commission? Zach, maybe? Oh, it looked like you might want to say. Oh.
So the vertical panels, the windows would be this tundra gray, and then the siding at the top, both the horizontal and the vertical board mat would be the white, and then this lighter gray would be the medium at the top. And then I'll have the stone one. That one's harder to, no one has any sample.
So that's a vinyl and the rest of these are,
Well, the bigger panels have to be a more sturdier piece of material.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Great. Thank you.
Just for the record, it sounds like you were just discussing the building materials that Fred was handing around.
Yeah, he was showing
Okay.
us First, building materials.
Thank you.
If we're good, I can make a motion. Anyone else?
There's any further discussion at all? All right, guess not.
I move to approve the PDD modification for Lot 1 CSM 13287.
Second.
Seconded by Zach. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay?
And I probably should have mentioned there was 2 conditions on that.
Oh, sorry. Yep, with the 2 conditions.
With 2 conditions.
Zach, you agreeing with that? All right, with 2 conditions. Thank you. All right, so that one is approved. What about the ADR?
Motion to approve ADR Lot 1, CSM 13827 townhomes with the 9 conditions.
Second.
Seconded by Stephen. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay? All right, that one is approved. Another ADR. The CBRF.
I move to approve ADR Lot 1 CSM 13827, the CBRF building.
Second.
Oh, sorry, with the 9 conditions noted by staff.
9 conditions. All right, Zach seconded with the 9 conditions. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay? All right, that is also approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. All right, moving along now to K, the public hearing consideration of conditional use permit CU 241821. It's by Dale Stika, but I think that we've got some other people here instead. Is it Johanny, maybe? Do you want to come up and tell us what you want to do on this property here? That'd be great. Thank you.
As you can see, we want to use the building for doing it like sporting, for renting, and also make tournaments for soccer and winter, obviously. We already have tournaments outside, obviously, for a couple years, but we try to make indoor soccer close to the people, obviously. We used to use, not us, but other places, they had the same building for the same purposes, but it's already closed. So we try to generate a new one or make a new one for other people, obviously, who like to play soccer or other different sports. And this is basically the place. They look like, that's the map, but that's the place that we want to use for that. And, that's it for me.
Okay, great. Lisa, would you like to do a staff report?
Sure, yep. So this property is located off of Index Road. The site plan shows Index Road here. It's a bit of an unusual lot configuration, but I think typical you'd find in older parts of the city where this building and the parcel are actually located at the back. It's more of, like a warehousing business building, but we did have building inspection visit the site and they didn't have any concerns. I have noted in the staff memo that the fire department was just looking for some additional information regarding the exit locations, and the applicant did provide an additional drawing, showing that all the exits are clearly marked and that they have a ramp at the side of the building. And you can see in the parking lot, they have areas blocked off that would allow for pedestrians to, leave the building. I just was not able to get confirmation from the fire chief that he did not have any additional concerns. So I just have a condition of approval there, hoping that he can take a look at that and just provide his final sign off. It just didn't happen before the meeting. So, but in terms of the use, so it's a conditional use permit for amusement and recreation services, which would allow the indoor soccer field. As you can see, they have provided a floor plan for the soccer field, bathrooms, and kind of a standing seating area for the players. I have added a condition of approval. The operations, hours of operation during the week would be 5 to 9, and they expect during weekdays that it would be more like an informal practice, so teams could rent the space for that. And then Friday, it would be 5 to 11 p.m. and Saturday to Sunday, 7 to 11 p.m. And this is when they would expect to have more of like their tournament games. So there would be, more turnover in terms of the number of teams, and potentially like spectators, like their families will come and watch them play. So, based on the information they provided, they expect 24 players per game and then like 3 to 5 staff on site. So they have provided for the site plan 30 parking spaces, which would be sufficient for the players and the employees. And then, we would expect to see overflow parking on Index Road. I think generally that part of Index Road does provide, there appears to be ample parking. I think if there were an issue and we started receiving complaints, then that's something that, the city could investigate and work with the applicant on. But as staff, I didn't have any concerns at this time. So I think that's all I have on my end. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Just one quick question before I go further. So it's my understanding, the building itself, the outside of it, you're not changing. You're obviously adding a soccer field on the inside, but the building itself, you're not changing. Is that correct? Okay.
No, just from inside.
Okay, excellent. All right, first I'll open the public hearing, but I don't have anyone from the public that's registered to speak, so I can close the public hearing. Open it up to comments or questions from Planning Commission.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Just
Zach.
looking at the parking lot, given the hours of operation, what is the lighting in the parking lot, so people are able to get in and out, safely, making sure that there's plenty of lighting. I'm looking at it, it's in between what looks to be like 2 warehouse buildings. I just wonder if there's enough lighting from a safety perspective to make sure that, if people are coming and going after 9, 10 o'clock, that there's plenty of lighting out there. So if there isn't, maybe it's something we can add as a condition.
Lisa, did that get addressed at all, or do you know the answer to the lighting?
So the site plan does show here, it's on building lighting. So it's these circles here,
Okay.
here, basically above the exits. I am not aware of any like freestanding pole lights that maybe you would see in a parking lot. I think, I think this came up with music school, especially because it was geared towards like children and just thinking about safety there. I did not identify concerns at this time, but I have not been in the parking lot at night. So if we wanted to just double check that, we could add a condition to confirm that the lighting is appropriate. I feel comfortable with that as staff, if you'd like.
Other than that, I'm super happy. I play soccer, so I love it that you're doing this.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions?
I have a question, but I think I don't want to just leave that hanging for the lighting.
Yeah, I think that's something that if someone does a motion, they want to add that as an additional condition that could happen.
So then my question, Lisa, is if the fire chief says we got an issue with this, does it come back to us as a board? What happens since that is a condition?
Yeah, so I think it would be if the fire chief confirms that it meets our codes and, our safety. I can't say exactly what he refers to when he's looking at his egress and ingress safety, but if he were to say, oh, they are not providing adequate ones, we would work with the applicant. And if they weren't able to address the chief's concerns adequately, then they wouldn't be able to occupy the building. If we were able to come to a solution, then we would just do that as a part of our staff work, and it wouldn't return either way.
Thanks.
Other comments or questions?
What is the fourth condition going to say then? How are we wording that?
I guess spitballing is something along, want to ensure that there's adequate parking, lighting, something along those lines, or have staff confirm that adequate parking, park lighting. Yeah.
Now that I think of it, actually, though, because, what we're showing there, how do I phrase this? Basically, the lighting on this individual property is fine. When you look at the parking lot, if you look at like a Google image of it, what I would be more afraid of is as you go closer to Index Road, that's where if I'm parked over there, that could be really dark and potentially dangerous. This is a, industrial kind of part of town. But that, it's not part of this actual property, unfortunately. So what I'm getting at is that we're probably gonna have overflow parking at night during, tournaments and things like, and larger events. But the lighting that is directly on this property, to me, seems adequate by what Lisa's shown.
And it was adequate before, right?
Although,
When we approved,
changed,
when we
yeah.
approved the use earlier for the children, it was adequate. So
What I'm getting at is to direct staff to go out and say, is there adequate lighting? I don't think that there is on the entire area that people are.
Oh, no, I
using,
understand what you're saying.
But on this individual property, I can't see how it wouldn't.
But my point was that we already approved
Sure.
as the lighting for even younger children, so I would prefer just to see it stick with the 3 conditions as set forth in the package.
That's fine.
Yeah, because it's very possible that where the lighting problem is not on this property and not something that this person can solve. We can't make them put lighting on someone else's building.
Yeah,
necessarily.
Out of interest, do we know if there's like street lamps there or?
It is street lighting, yeah.
There is some street lighting.
Oh, good, good.
And I know that hopefully Ochala will go through all the way to Index, which is kind of close to this area. And so that would help. I imagine it would put in some street lighting for there as well. It's not next to the building, but it's at least in the area. Other, Stephen? Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say something else. Anyone else?
Motion?
Yeah, motion, I guess.
I'll move approval of conditional use permit CU-2418-21 with the 3 conditions set forth by staff.
Second.
Seconded by Zach. Do you have a question?
Oh, I was wondering, are we adding the lighting in the parking lot or just no?
I believe that was intentional
We're
to not
good.
do
Okay.
that. Yep.
All right.
All right, so we've got a motion to approve with the 3 conditions as staff recommended. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving along to L, public hearing and rezone request. I'm not sure if Jeff
Yeah, we don't
O'Brien
have
is
any
on.
applicants for this one.
No applicants? Okay. Then you want to do a staff report then, Lisa?
Yep. So this one we've seen a few times in different iterations. So we approved, or the city approved the final plat for the O'Brien Flats for the lands along Seminole and Lacey. And as we know, they created a new lot referred to as the farm consolidation. And at the time we noted that they would have to rezone that property to rural residential. And so this is them taking that step to rezone that property.
All right. Any questions? I don't think that you met in ag and rural, did you? Ed?
No, we had looked at this early on, so this was what would be expected at this point.
Okay.
I'll move approval of RZ 2419-21 with the 3 conditions as noted.
Second.
Seconded by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved. Next up is M. And so this is the assisted living facility. We got a number of people here. I think Mike and Ken and Paul. I'm not sure who all wants to come up and speak, but
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Michael Samuels. I'm here representing Andev Group with regard to its petition for approval now of an SIP for the senior living project on Wilshire Drive. We have, we believe, complied with everything that the staff has requested. And we're prepared, obviously, to address any additional questions or comments that you might have. We have in attendance tonight Don Anbar, who is the principal of Andev, Ken Kozakowski, who is the project architect for Ganther Construction, and then we have available via Zoom Jessica Vaughn and Paul Phillips from JSD Engineering to answer any engineering-related site questions, drainage, et cetera. So I think everybody has seen this before. don't know what you want me to do in terms of any type of presentation or anything, but as I understand it, we have been able to deal successfully with all of the comments that we received from the various departments and staff. And so we are looking for your approval this evening.
All right, thank you. Lisa, could you do a staff report, please?
Yep. So I agree with the applicant. I think it's consistent with what we've seen with the pre-application and the GIP, with the GIP zoning being granted by council. Taking a look at the plans, haven't seen any substantial changes. We'll just share as a part of the architectural design review, just share the plans with you all, which do seem to be consistent with some of the preliminary concepts they had shared with us. So you see we have like the prairie style architecture they had described. It's composite siding and brick. They have some architectural elements, breaking up the facade for the longer buildings. And so that's the 1-story building. And then the other building will look very similar, but will be a 2-story, same building materials, similar architecture you can see there. And we can also just take a look at the site plan so everyone can see that for the record as well, which is consistent with what was previously approved. There you can see the 1-story memory care and then the 2-story assisted living. Check my memo. The GIP ordinance or the SIP ordinance is included in the staff memo for your reference as well, which just summarizes the approved uses and the dimensional standards for the project. For the ADR, we have our standard conditions as staff. So no other comments from me.
All right, excellent, thank you. All right, then I will open up the public hearing, and we have Karen Woodson who'd like to come and speak. If you'd like to come up at either one of the mics, they both work, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Karen Woodson. I'm the property manager at Chapel Valley Apartments, which is located at 5771 Chapel Valley Road. We have 110 apartments there. We're independent living, so, and it's 55 and over. So being it's independent living, a lot of my residents will walk to McKee Park. Most of them do have walkers. We also have residents that have wheelchairs. Our residents are pretty active, and we even have some that, ride bikes all around the neighborhood and stuff like that. Our concern with this development is the amount of traffic that's going to increase on Chapel Valley Road. Throwing some rough numbers together, just basing this on the 72-bed facility, not including the memory care, you're going to need one administrator to run the facility. You're going to need an assistant director, a full-time nurse, concierge, 7 to 8 care staff during the day, 2 shifts, 3 to 4 overnight staff workers, 2 to 3 full-time kitchen workers, 2 full-time housekeepers. You'll have 30 people coming in and out each day on Chapel Valley Road, and that does not include those that are just leaving for a break and coming back. Once a week, you'll have a full semi-truck going down Chapel Valley Road with food deliveries. And then some assumptions that we've made, assuming each resident goes out for an appointment once a month, that is another 144 trips a month in and out on Chapel Valley Road. Another assumption is that 2 family members visit one resident each month. That's another 288 trips in and out on Chapel Valley Road. Assuming 10 residents are on hospice at 3 times a week, that's another 120 trips in and out on Chapel Valley Road. Lastly, assuming that 10 or more residents at the facility have PT or OT or other rehab, that is another 80 trips in and out on Chapel Valley Road. Lastly, we'll also have marketing people coming in and visiting, such as for sales. We figure that would be about 10 trips a week, so that's another 40 trips a month in and out on Chapel Valley Road. Just for the 72-bed facility, we're looking at an additional 3,376 vehicles per month going in and out on Chapel Valley Road. If you take into consideration the memory care facility also, we would add in about another 1,688 vehicles per month, bringing the grand total to just over 5,000 vehicles per month, and additional traffic that is going to be on Chapel Valley Road. Chapel Valley Road already is a very narrow road. Parking is allowed on both sides of the road. There are times when you cannot pass two cars side by side there. People have to pull off to the side in order to get by. I've had a lot of my senior residents complain about the traffic on Chapel Valley Road and how difficult it is for them to get through. So, our concern with the facility is the amount of traffic that's going to be coming onto Chapel Valley Road. I have residents that walk around all the time. I would appreciate it if the board, if you're going to consider taking on a project this big in that area, that you look at how to improve Chapel Valley Road to accommodate this kind of traffic.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I also had submitted some comments from Marty Seabree from Fitchburg, and registering in opposition with the comment, "I'm very concerned about traffic and parking. Already the traffic on Chapel Valley Road is reduced to one lane because McKee Park apartment employees park on both sides. Where will the employees of this project park? Not on the street, please." And that's all I have for public comments, so I will close the public hearing and open up to comments from, or questions from the Planning Commission. Rich?
Well, on Plan Commission, our primary role is in compliance with our comprehensive plan and plats and zoning, but we really do have an obligation to the citizens. I was the lone holdout. When this came before us in September, I was the lone holdout against the approval of this, and that was based on just on the quantity of opposition, the amount of opposition from the people that live there. So I'm against this. I'm going to vote against this purely just, I think that we need to pay attention to the citizens who are going to be living near these things. Thanks.
All right. Other comments? Ed?
Sure. I'm going to respectfully disagree with Rich. And I do understand that this is going to be, a fair amount of additional traffic. Chapel Valley Road should have been originally designed to handle what was intended to be at this property. And this was originally zoned for high-density residential. A number of years back, when the project came in along those lines, we had probably 600 people signing a petition to effectively downzone this property, which we did at that time, to a zoning which would now accommodate this. So I think in suggesting that this is too dense for this property, you're asking the city to once again downzone the same property. I'm not willing to do that. This road should have been designed to handle this traffic. If not, perhaps it'll need some improvements at some point in the future, and that's part of what we as the city handle. So I'm in favor of this.
Was there any follow-up discussion? Because that was one of the two major concerns from the community members was about parking, which I don't think is really an issue. The applicant has proven time and time again that parking on their property is sufficient, but then the traffic. And I will point out just one bit, that Chapel Valley Road is not the only way to access this property. If you were coming from the west, you would naturally go down Richardson instead and take Wilshire over. So even still, an increase in traffic. There is no reason why Chapel Valley operates the way it does today, let alone if we add this or if we don't add this. So rather than just passing the buck and saying something should be done, we don't have that authority. But what is the city doing, Mr. Mayor? Sorry, I'm going to put you on the hot seat here. But what is the city doing to address those concerns from Chapel Valley? Are we looking at changing the parking situation so that it is only on one side, et cetera?
Yeah, I guess not only here, but all the way up past like where Benvenuto's is. I've already talked to staff a little bit about even that area being pretty narrow. And so that is something we've talked about. I can't say that it will change, but I know it's something that we've addressed throughout this whole stretch as being a concern with when there's cars parked on both sides. So it is a area that we are looking at. And we have a committee in the city that kind of looks at safety things and traffic and parking and these types of items. And I don't think they've met lately. They will, I'm sure, after the new year and talk about that, because that is something that is identified really in this whole area, you know, not just this street, but also up by Benvenuto's in that area as well.
In an effort of transparency, then, what is that group, so that if community members are concerned about this, they can raise those concerns appropriately, since we are not the governing body over that?
I would say go directly to Chad Brecklin. He's on that. There's a few other staff members. I might forget someone if I start saying those people, but our city administrator, Chad Brecklin, would be the person that you could reach out to for that. Any other questions or comments?
I was just gonna say, yeah, I would agree with that, especially like on Brendan. Brendan's a tight street, so I reckon we should look at that.
Yeah, and ways back and forth, which also almost makes it worse to see. But anyway, that's a different discussion.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that myself, and I think actually one of the reasons why I like this project is the intensity of the traffic that it's going to generate is actually much lower than a lot of the other potential uses, like single-family homes or et cetera, that could be there. So I think it's kind of a nice balance for the neighborhood.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the things that initially I liked so much about this project is because, yes, there's going to be more traffic, but this is actually probably the lowest traffic impact out of anything that you could have picked, actually, in that. Anyone else? Or a motion?
I'll move to approve rezone request RZ 2398-21 with the 8 conditions as noted by staff.
Second.
Sent by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay.
Nay.
All right, I believe the ayes have it. That one's approved. And then we have N, the ADR. Any additional comments on the ADR?
Nice project.
Thank you. On behalf
Materials.
of Mr. Kozakowski, thank you.
All right, or a motion?
I'll move to approve the ADR lots 53 and 54 for Chapel Valley. And it looks like the 8 conditions are actually attached to the ADR.
That's true.
So,
Yep.
Second.
All right, seconded by Ed. And so the 8 conditions are actually in the ADR. But I guess if you fulfill those, you'll fulfill the rezoning ones anyway. All in favor of approving, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And,
I
I
think
got
we
one
have
more,
one
actually.
more for an
All
early
right,
start.
and also an early issuance of permits, lots 53 and 54. Anything you want to add on this?
No.
Lisa, anything you want to add from staff?
I'll just note for the record, so this is a standard request whenever public improvements are associated with the project. And in this case, those public improvements are the paths that we've asked the developer to install. So in order for the construction of the bike paths and the building to happen concurrently, Plan Commission approval of early issuance of permits is required. The standard conditions for all early start permits apply.
All right, anything, Randy?
No, I'm just going to motion.
I got
Go ahead.
This is standard operating procedure. I remember early foundations from a gazillion years ago. I honestly think we're wasting everybody's time when it comes before us. It could just be the staff could take care of this without going through this additional step. It's already going through building and everybody else. I think in the future, we might want to consider letting staff be the one responsible without having to put it on our agenda. But that's for
Yeah.
later.
You know, I agree with that, Rich, and there was a time when we almost never approved these. And the concern was that if someone got in the ground with a project and someone else was building the roads around them, say you have a new development area where you got a developer who sold a lot, the developer has to put in the roads, someone else is putting in a building, they get the building up, and there's no roads. That was a concern, and the other concern was, of course, fire. You know, if you just get the concrete in, you don't have a fire problem. If you get the stick in, then you have a, so there are times when this really can be a concern, but there are a lot of times that we're seeing these recently where I completely agree with you. There's no reason to have, you know, the applicant have to go through this step, but that's probably a matter of change of the ordinance that, you know, Randy can probably handle.
Well, let's stick to this issue. Let's stick to this permit before we solve all the world's problems.
We can talk over, Ed, we can have a beer and talk about it later, but
right.
I agree, I see your point.
All right. Any other comments, Randy? I think we're
I
ready.
have no further comment. I'll make the motion though when we're ready.
I think we're ready.
All right. Motion to approve early issuance of permits, lots 53 and 54 Chapel Valley. Looks like with the 8 conditions.
Second.
Sent by Emily. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And opposed, nay. All right, that one is approved. Now we're on P, conditional use permit 241721 by Ken Crary. And I'm not sure. Oh, all right, come on up and let us know what you got going on. Thank you.
Hi.
Hello, welcome.
Builders. I've never been through this before, so bear with me.
We'll be gentle.
I think Mr. Valand is going to join us by Zoom.
All right, yep, looks like Knut is on there, Valand,
He'll
yep.
be better at answering questions.
All right, yeah, just make sure you talk to the mic and he can hear you then.
Oh.
So what are you trying to do?
What am I trying to do?
What's the project?
Trying to build a building on a really, really small lot. It's really hard. It's taken a lot of time to try to find something that will fit and meet code.
And so what's the building for and what's the project about?
It's a building that there will be 2 commercial units on the first floor and then 2 rental units, residential rental units on the second floor. And that's what we need the conditional use permit for, is the apartments on the second floor.
All right. Anything else you or Mr. Valand? I don't know if we can hear you or not, but either.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just I'm available to answer any of your questions.
Okay, great. Then would you like staff to kind of go into a staff report then?
Pardon?
Should we have staff go into their report next?
Yes.
All right, Lisa, if you could do a staff report, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, so I can provide some more detail for the application. So this property is located on Nesbitt Road. And as you can see, it's sort of an irregularly shaped triangular lot. It has remained vacant for many years. So this building, it is commercial, essentially a mixed use building, even though it's of a smaller scale. So we have the architectural design review for the actual building. And then we have a conditional use permit, which allows the second story residential use. And I'll show the elevations just to give you an idea what that looks like. So here we have the first floor commercial use, kind of that standard shop front, what you would expect to see, I believe. And then we do allow, so this parking here is for the residential units. So there's 1 space in each garage. And then the site plan also shows parking marked in the front. So it would be a kind of tandem style parking that I think is appropriate for just 2 units of residential. So this is where the front of the commercial spaces would be. They provide adequate parking for the residential use with the garage and the spaces out front. And then they provide adequate parking for the commercial use based on our parking standards. I think in terms of the architectural design, you know, we do have a LP smart siding as well as the brick veneer. And then one thing to note, you may see that the site plan doesn't have any stormwater, and we have confirmed with Dane County that due to the small size of the improvements that they don't actually trigger the requirements for providing any stormwater facilities on site. So that does allow them to maximize the building. Staff have not identified, you know, any concerns. I think So as I noted in the staff memo, the surrounding properties are primarily more business in nature. However, we have identified, we have approved projects in the Orchard Point area to the west, like the senior living project, the workforce housing project in that area. And then there's also another high density residential project a little bit to the south. So, we do allow through our code residential units in our business zoning district. And so I haven't identified any concerns at this time. I think the building materials are of a higher quality, and no other staff comments.
All right. Then I can open up the public hearing. I don't have anyone from the public here that wishes to speak, so I can close the public hearing and open up to questions or comments.
Sure. I think I like the idea of incorporating some residential into a little bit more into this neighborhoods. I think that's great. Lisa, does the site plan meet our ISR standards? Maybe I missed it in the staff report, but I didn't see that.
Yeah.
It looks like a lot of pavement and building, but.
Yeah, so for the applicant, it's a 62% impervious surface ratio. I think, all this space along the rear and the sides of the building, they have some landscaping out front. So going off the plans, they meet the requirement.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I will also note, there is one condition on the ADR that is a little bit unusual. So I'll just note that we have asked them, and this is per comments from the Public Works Department, which they noted during review, but we weren't able to address ahead of the meeting, is that they've asked them to submit a site distance calculation for the road for review by the Director of Public Works. So just to make sure, Neset Road does bend at this location, and just to make sure that driveway location is safe. So, if there were any outstanding issues with that, where the Director of Public Works takes an issue with those calculations, there may be a chance that this would return to Plan Commission if it can't be resolved by staff. So that one is a little bit unusual as well. And then I will also note that they have to still submit their fixture cut sheets for lighting. So we've been seeing this more recently with staff approval of lighting, which I'd like to continue to avoid and hold applicants to that. But, given the nature of COVID, a lot of applicants have been having a difficult time getting consultants to meet the deadlines. And, we can try to be flexible as much as we can. And then also the plans do not note the building color, the material colors on the plans. So I've also included a staff approval for that as well. And if the applicant, they'd indicated that they would maybe have materials ready for Plan Commission. So maybe they can just comment, and if they don't, then we can keep that as a staff approval.
Do you have some samples?
I can show you
there?
a picture
Yeah,
of what I'm
that'd be
going to
great.
use.
Sure.
That I used at another building.
While he pulls it up, I have a question that's pretty much unrelated, so I'm going to ask it now. There's a very slim property to the north of this. It's residential today. In terms of good planning, this is a very small building and a very small lot, and now we're leaving a very thin parcel just to the north between another decently sized, building of 3 or 4 units. Do we know, is there any plans for that? It's been for sale for a long time. It's zoned for business, or it looks like future land use is business.
Are you referring to the building adjacent to Jung's? It's a tan building?
No, it's a house. Between that building.
Yeah, small
freestanding
next
structure.
Keep going down. Cafe. There's a residential house right on that corner of that where Nesbitt turns. And 6202, yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's one of those orphan lots that isn't ideal.
Okay.
Unless you're aware of anything, Lisa, but I'm not aware of anything. I think it's just unfortunately an orphan lot.
As a planner, I just want to say these have to be combined before we do anything with them. You know what I mean? In terms of, instead of leaving these little sections that are now going to sit vacant or, in whatever condition. So that was the only kind of
Yeah.
planning thought was going through my mind, and I knew it wasn't something that we could really take action on, but wanted to just raise it.
Yeah,
Kinda like
used to
next
be
to-
a landscape architect in a freestanding building right in that, right on the curve there.
Yeah, I think it's similar. Okay. It's similar to even like where Quick Trip wants to build over on East Sherrill. There's that blue skinny building that's between where Quick Trip is going in and the quick gas station that's there. And that's another one that's kind of this weird shaped, skinny orphan. And unfortunately, you can't force them to tear it down and combine it with another project, even though you might want to. It's not ideal, that's for sure.
Yeah, perhaps, I'm curious, Ken, did you look at that property, that house? Because I know it was for sale at one point when you were just considering the site, or did that not come up at that time?
Yeah, so I guess the question, Ken, is did you consider buying that house next to this property to make your lot size a little bit bigger?
I asked, and he won't sell.
No?
No.
Or they weren't interested in selling at this point in time?
Pardon?
Did you say they're not interested in selling at this point?
No, they won't sell.
They won't sell, okay.
Yeah, I asked them.
That's too bad. Other questions or comments?
Are we comfortable removing that condition then from staff since we've now seen?
I guess I would like staff to see it, even though we saw it and we didn't have any initial concerns. I think it'd be good for staff to still see that, even though it looked great and beautiful, and I think there's gonna be no issue with it. I would like staff to see that.
That's a good point, because I know Lisa has a better eye than the 6 of us gentlemen up here, so unless Emily, you can speak up, but the rest of us are, I'm gonna throw us all under the bus.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah, that's right, we don't want you on that
Fashion.
committee.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, then I will move to approve conditional use permit 2417-21 with the 2 conditions as noted by staff.
Second.
Seconded by, I'm gonna give it to Emily. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that one's approved. And then the ADR.
I'll move to approve ADR at 6204 Nesbitt Road with the 7 conditions as noted by staff.
Second.
Seconded by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. That is also approved. All right, thank you.
Thank you. What was it? The lighting and the curb opening?
There's a number of smaller things, and staff can help you out if you want. I think that you've talked about it. Nothing. It should be stuff that they've already talked with you about. It's I think also where the water impact fees and erosion control permits, and just making sure that staff can see the building colors as well, just sending it to them so they can see the colors, which we didn't have a concern with, but we just want staff to take a look at that.
Okay.
The site
Pretty minor
distance, is that the
stuff.
one you were asking about? The site distance for where the driveway comes
Yeah.
out? Yeah. So that's something that Public Works needs to take a look at.
Okay.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you.
All right, last thing on here is V, the pre-app PDD for Traceway North. And I think I saw David Gevers online. If you want to walk us through that, that would be great.
Yeah, happy to. Happy to. Thank you for having us tonight. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. Trying to get my face off the screen because it's it's very distracting. Let's see here. How do I do that? Let's see. Trying to see how I can find it. Is there a way that I can see you guys on here? Sorry, I've never done this before. You know?
I'm not really sure. Gallery view, maybe. I mean.
Oh, okay. I guess that's a little bit better.
right.
I don't see the room though, but that's okay. I'll just talk into the Ethernet. Anyways, thank you for being here late tonight and hearing this. So for those of you on Plan Commission who don't know me, my name is David Gevers. I'm Vice President and Director of Development for EJ Plesko and Associates. We first got involved with the properties in this part of Fitchburg back in 2005 when we bought the old Ridgewood apartment complex out of foreclosure. At that time, it encompassed about 861 units. It was in really rough shape. It was about 50% occupied, holes in the walls, mattresses in the basement, and a lot of issues there. Since that time, we've invested a lot of resources into all of these properties. For the majority of the apartments have been split into two properties, the Pines and the Fairways apartments. And then we tore down a number of apartment buildings, some of which are where the new project that we completed and brought through Plan Commission here a couple of years ago, the Highline Senior Apartments, which was our first Section 42 low-income housing tax credit project. And that one was recently awarded 2021 Senior Housing of the Year award from the Apartment Association of South Central Wisconsin. So we've invested a lot in this area. You know, between the Pines and the Fairways alone, we've invested over $7 million in upgrades and improvements over the years, and both properties are thriving. The Pines itself is 100% occupied, and the Fairways is close behind it. Our view is that we want to provide quality, affordable housing. Both those properties are market rate, or what you might consider naturally occurring affordable housing. The Highline itself is a subsidized Section 42 project. The building itself ranges in incomes from 30 to 80% of county median income, and averages to 60. And if you haven't been there yet, I encourage you. I'd love to host whatever Plan Commission members would like to come and take a tour. It's a great property. We're very proud of the impact that's had on this area on the corner of Traceway and Fish Hatchery. And our residents they're very happy. It's a great thriving community. And it's a truly mixed income community with that range of the project that we're showing to you tonight is actually for the 5 acres, which is currently vacant, but had some of the original apartment buildings on it that we tore down back in 2007 before the big financial crash. And this project that we're proposing, it's a market rate apartment building. We feel like that's a great step in the right direction for this neighborhood. It's a pretty sizable investment. It's a roughly 180 unit project. We think it's important to bring, as part of the continued trajectory and investment in this area, we think it's important to bring a mix of incomes onto this side of Fish Hatchery Road. And we think that this proposal accomplishes that. The approach to the design, and I don't know, Lisa, do you put the drawings up there, or does Kirk do that, or how does this work?
You can share the screen, and then if you have certain exhibits you'd like to show.
Yeah, if you just want to pull up the site plan, you know that's a rendering from looking west on Traceway. Great. Yeah, that's perfect. So just to orient you there, you see Fish Hatchery Road off to the right of the drawing. The new Highline senior housing is that building just south of Traceway at the southwest corner of Traceway and Fish Hatchery Road. We've included in this site plan for reference the hub project that the city is proposing on parkland that was dedicated as part of the as part of the Highline project. You can see it fits in there both on the north and the south side of Traceway Drive. And I'm not sure how familiar the Plan Commission is with that project. And it's and so you can see that our approach to the 5 acre, which is the area on the north side of Traceway there, with the new apartment building, was to kind of continue sort of the infill, kind of redevelopment nature of Traceway Drive, kind of converting it from a traditional sort of garden style apartment approach that was here in this area originally, but lining the street edge and creating a much more attractive and walkable street. I would say the main, and Kirk can get into the specifics of the design for you guys, but the main approach to this project, we feel pretty strongly that there's a strong demand for townhomes. In this area, that's always been our experience at the Pines Apartments, which has a number of townhomes. And so what this project attempts to do is to actually line the street, Traceway Drive, with townhomes. So give it more of like a brownstone feel to it. This accomplishes a couple of things. It sort of creates that great scale, that sort of great walkable scale. It also has the effect of creating some more eyes on the street. And in our experience, townhome tenancy tends to be folks who are a little bit more stable, a little bit longer tenure at the property, and they take a little bit more interest in sort of the environment and their space. And then we actually, if you want to pop back over that site plan real quick, we turn the corner as you get to the north side hub project there with those townhomes. So the goal is to actually line the new park with these townhomes with this sort of brownstone feel as well. The topography of the site lends itself actually pretty well to parking. The parking is enclosed. We have a raised sort of rooftop plaza, which is pretty sizable for outdoor recreation for our residents, and gathering space, and very similar to what Terrace Point does across a fish hatchery with their approach to that site. So that's kind of the broad strokes. We've met with most of the alders. We've met with our alders, the new alders, now that we've switched over to District 2. The general reaction we've got is pretty strong support on the council, particularly from our new alders in this area, with the idea being that this area needs investment. The Highline, I think, was a great first step. And obviously, this is kind of the culmination of the demolition that occurred here that brought down about 5 apartment buildings, the older style garden style apartment buildings. And it's this type of investment, along with what the city is proposing with the hub, really is very meaningful, for this area. And with that, I guess, Kirk, if you want to kind of jump into maybe the plans a little bit and talk through maybe some of the aesthetics there.
Yeah, I think you said everything very well, David. So I guess in terms of the plans, as was indicated, we have if you want to click on that, Lisa, that'd be great, the first one. So the lower level parking is actually at first floor. So you would enter from Traceway Drive into the parking lot, which is covered then by the patio, which was mentioned before. We also have a bunch of townhomes which have walk-ups from the first floor, as you can see, lined to the east, south, and west of the building here. And then if you go up to the second floor, those townhomes continue along those same areas. So they're 2-story flats essentially. And then it's ringed by typical apartment units from there, which will be a mix of studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedroom apartments. And you can see that's just kind of an idea of what the patio area could look like. And then you go to the 3rd floor, and it gets converted then to all apartment units. You can see the outline of the townhomes below, so it's set back to give you that scale that we think is pretty important in this area. So basically, it's a 4-story building that feels like a 2-story at the streetscape, and we're also pushing the building up as close as we can to Traceway without infringing on that easement. We're still kind of working out some of those details, but that is our goal here. So, and then the 4th floor is just an extension of that with a couple of rooftop patios at the edges there to hopefully capture some views and to kind of, again, push that building back a little bit to reduce the height at kind of the more important areas. And then, as David had said, it's a mix of different heavy masonry type materials to get that kind of brownstone sort of look. We're trying to go for something that is that has a common theme to it, but is different enough to make it not seem monotonous as you walk down the street, and kind of make it more of a natural streetscape that you would see in a more denser city, maybe. And that's about it from the design standpoint.
All right, would you like to go to the staff report then, Lisa?
Yep, so we're all familiar with that pre-application PDD process. So the opportunity for Plan Commission to provide some initial feedback and indicate whether or not the use of PDD zoning is appropriate in this case. So I'll just highlight some of the points that the applicant included in their pre-application as to why PDD zoning is appropriate, with the primary reasons indicating why our RH zoning district would not be able to accommodate the project. So the our RH zoning district outlines minimum lot size requirements depending on the type of unit that's provided. So if they were to provide the unit mix that they provide here, they would need to have a 7.5 acre site to accommodate the project. We also have that requirement where we don't rezone lots that are larger than 90,000 square feet. We have the minimum setbacks that are more typical in like a suburban sort of multifamily product as opposed to an urban one with smaller setbacks. And it also would require a conditional use permit for the number of units in the building height, which is something sometimes people look to avoid because it's a conditional use as opposed to permitted. And then some of the potential benefits that they list, which is something that we require by our ordinance for applicants to summarize, is the potential increase in property taxes, improving the character of the neighborhood, creating a more urban form on the Fish Hatchery Road corridor, and that an infill type project would be reducing sprawl by putting the density within the urban service area. And then it also outlines various goals and policies in the comprehensive plan, which this project would be consistent with. So a couple more details on the development itself. The density is about 35 units per acre. It's 182 units on about 5.2 acre site. Some other things to note is they are proposing a 71% impervious surface ratio, with the city standard being 65. So Plan Commission does have the authority to increase that through our architectural design review, as long as the developer is accounting for that additional impervious surface through their stormwater. But it is something, when you're looking, it's a factor that shows that the intensity of the use is higher, right? So if they're exceeding the standard ISR, that's one of the things you can see for that. The parking ratio, I think, is about 1.53. So our city standard is 2 units or 2 spaces per unit, but we have consistently approved less than that through our PDD project. So I would say that that's pretty consistent with what we've seen in other projects in the city. And then I did just want to clarify one comment that I had put in the staff memo regarding the park fees. So I had noted that over $800,000 in park fees would be associated with the project. because the plan submitted with this did not note that there would be any parkland dedication associated with the project. But in speaking with the applicant, he had noted that they do have available park credits for those buildings that they tore down to the north, as David had indicated. So for example, with the Highline project, they actually used park credits for the units that were on this property to offset the parkland requirements. So that is a practice that the city has allowed in the past where, you know, if there were 80 units on a parcel and they tore them down to build another 80 units, you know, it may or may not be appropriate to then charge them for 80 units of fee in lieu of parkland dedication again, when they're just replacing the units that were already there. So that's something to consider, and you know, council would approve that approach by approving the project by allowing them to use the parkland credits. And I believe that they had indicated that there's about 60 old units that they would apply to this project. And then they also are interested in potentially dedicating some land on the other side of Traceway Drive. And I had, you know, let them know that, you know, Parks Commission, Plan Commission, and Council are the bodies that review parkland dedication to determine if it is appropriate. And they are working with the Parks Director to evaluate that proposal and bring it to Park Commission for some initial feedback to see if that's appropriate. So I just wanted to clarify that it may not be all fee in lieu of land dedication, and that there are a couple other avenues that they're pursuing to fulfill those requirements. And that's all I have.
All right, I will open up to comments from Randy. Go ahead.
Not sure who this question is for. It's probably maybe for Lisa, or could be for David as well. But this isn't TID 10, correct?
It is.
It is. So the mayor will answer that. Okay. And you're not asking for any TID money, correct?
No.
Okay. And it's a market rate building.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. And what is the dollar proposed for the building? 35 million investment?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, in hard cost, it's roughly 34 million is our current cost estimate. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the overall project itself is going to be probably in the $40 million range.
Okay, so it could add value back to the TID then as well. I mean, I'm impressed with the project. I will say that. I think Traceway needs some work, especially as I stood at Terrace Point to the ribbon cutting for Fish Hatchery, and just looking up Traceway, and it definitely needs some work, and I think this project would add a lot of value to that particular area. It's probably there's probably some issues with maybe speed along Traceway and lighting. Maybe you folks could provide some additional lighting. I don't know, it's something that we could work through. But overall, I've been impressed with the project. I like the design of the project. I like the concept of townhomes and that ability to walk out onto Traceway. I think to just take it a step further, it'd be great if they were owner-occupied, but given what you've presented, I'm very impressed. So.
Thank you. Others? Stephen?
I would echo, if those townhomes could be owner-occupied, that would be like icing on the cake. I'm thoroughly impressed with the artist renderings of what it looks like. I was pretty blown away by it. I think it would be a great addition. My concern, I have no concerns with PDD, is the stormwater. We've done some approving of over that 65%. I hate doing it, and I would love to be able to see this come closer to that 65%. So I think in terms of feedback, if there's any way to gain some non-impervious service, that would be great. Or impervious service, excuse me, that would be great. But otherwise, all for it.
I'm going to echo that. I had a note. Have you considered pervious pavement for the back parking lot?
We have not.
Is it something that's possible?
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely take the comments, we appreciate all the feedback and the comments that the Plan Commission can give us, but we'll definitely look at that and dive into that number and see what that impervious looks like and what in that. I don't know which area that that covers. I don't know if Kirk or Bruce, if you're on, if you know specifically which area is, if we're including the plaza in that number as well.
Otherwise, I'm very impressed with both track record and the way this is looking for the future.
Yeah, as someone who lived on Hatchery Hill, your track record, I did not know that you were behind those apartments and that cleanup. So impressive track record.
I guess I'm going to speak up, and this is nothing that I haven't already shared with David, but I do like the kind of brownstone look on the front. That is really unique, and I like that a lot, but I'm not in favor of this project. I don't think it's the right project for the right neighborhood, and for a lot of different reasons. One is there's maybe some minimal additional parkland, but this is an area starved for parkland. Right now, there's kids in that neighborhood that play soccer on the golf course or in parking lots. We do have the Hub Phase 1 next to this, which is a start, but still woefully inadequate in this area for parkland. And with all the land that they have, to not give us another 5 acres or a significant amount for a soccer field, some open play, something like that, is a huge miss and a huge mistake for me. So that's one of the concerns I have. The impervious surface, I think, is a concern. I think that we need to watch that, especially, again, with as much land as they have. We need to have a higher standard, especially in a neighborhood that's a healthy neighborhood, because there's a lot of struggles in this neighborhood. There's a lot of challenges in this neighborhood, and so we really need to, I feel, have an even higher standard to make sure that this is a healthy neighborhood. And when we talk about healthy neighborhoods, we talk about a wide variety of housing. Adding market rate apartments to the west side of Fitchburg Road, to me, does not diversify this. This area needs owner occupied, and they don't want to do it. That's not their business. I get that, except they own a lot of land up there, and if they're not going to make any of that owner occupied, that's a huge problem. And as a city, we've asked a number of times for planning of the whole property, and they won't do it. It's because I think, anyway, I'm speculating obviously now, that they're not going to ever do anything except apartments. And that's a huge problem for me, because this is an area that needs owner occupied. When you look at other neighborhoods like Allied that have had a lot of issues in the past, what did we do to fix that? We took out density in apartments and put in owner occupied. So why are we putting more density without any additional parkland or anything else in this neighborhood? As a plan commission, we need to demand better and try to help fix this and get this neighborhood on track where it needs to be. And this west side of Fitchburg Road is a huge challenge for the city. It's an area that needs a lot more. Other than that, I think that having this huge 4-story building that's even bigger than the High Line that's not on Fitchburg Road is a mistake. If it was on Fitchburg Road, it wouldn't be as bad to me, but this is behind the shopping mall. This isn't on, it's, I guess, in the quarter, but it's not on Fitchburg Road. I think when you look at design for Fitchburg Road, it's the 4-story, 2, 3, 4-story buildings on Fitchburg Road, and then once you get off Fitchburg Road, they go down to like the 2-story. So to me, it's, again, too big of a building as well. I think that's pretty much all that I have. I think, I've said this many times, in a year we're gonna get the town of Madison and another 700 apartments, and the amount of units that are rentals in the city is gonna be about 60%. This is making that, continue to make it worse. I understand why people wanna build apartments. The vacancy rates are like 2% in the area. We're close to Madison, and people are making a lot of money off of it. But as a city, that's an issue. And I do think that we need to verify that there's credit for parkland, because I thought they used all their credit for the High Line. I know that there was credit used for the High Line as well. So we can verify that as a city. But to me, it's just, there's some things that are nice about it, and I like the brownstone look, but to me, it is not the right thing, and it's a planning body that to me isn't what we want long-term in this area. So that's why I don't support it, I won't support it. So anyway, I'll let other people, go ahead.
Can I respond to that, or do you want me to wait until?
Why don't we just wait for now?
Okay, happy to.
Your argument is persuasive, and I would really like to see owner occupied in here as well. I think we'd all like to see that. I love the looks of this project, and I love what you guys have been doing with this neighborhood overall. You've done a fantastic job, but there has to be a point at which we do start to bring in owner occupied into this. You know, to me, this is probably the right location for that. Perhaps there are other possible locations, but I think that it maybe is the opportunity here. I would really like to ask Lisa, I mean, you're trained as a planner. Can you give us your opinion with your planning hat on what really you think should be here?
I can understand if you don't want to be put on the spot and answer that.
You're the only one, the only one who went to college for this.
Yeah. So, obviously I defer to the policymakers at the city, right? With a rezone, it's a policy decision and they can determine what is and is not appropriate. That being said, you can always look to let's say our future land use map and our future land use categories. The property has been identified as being suitable for high density residential use. And typically that is expressed in the term of a multifamily housing project. I think that what we have seen in working with developers, I know that city staff have been pushing for the idea of getting a owner occupied housing product on Fish Hatchery Road. I think staff absolutely share that interest, and it's evident in plans that we have adopted as well. But there's always sites that are appropriate for it and sites that are not. And it also, in our conversations, that offering even a condo type ownership product, the financing for that kind of project, and honestly, David could probably comment more on the financing side of real estate, but that it does produce its own challenges. And even like our land division ordinance, how you can, how a site could accommodate, let's say, a 0 lot line townhouse product. I think there are opportunities, and I have shared my thoughts with other city staff and the city administrator that, we can take a policy approach of providing more ownership opportunities on Fish Hatchery Road, but we also have to be able to point to plans and a policy direction that developers can look to when they have lands in ownership. So, rather than coming project by project and parcel by parcel and asking for an ownership product, we could instead have more of a comprehensive approach to how do we envision bringing an ownership product to Fish Hatchery Road. But that's just my own opinion, kind of approach as a planner. Ultimately, a rezone is a policy decision.
Rich, go ahead.
I disagree with you. I think based on two things. One, it's market rate. Two, it's urban. I think it fits. I think it looks good. I like it. I'm going to continue to like it.
The Woods and the Pines were market rate at one point too. The Woods and the Pines were also market rate at one point. Those were like the place. It was like living at a country club at one point in time. Anyway, sorry. Others?
So if you remember, it was a good year or almost 2 ago that we got that big presentation of what North Fish Hatch was going to look like. And the long-term plan here was that where the current strip mall is, that would be like an assisted living and then transitions over, or whatever. Remember that whole section, but we said, well, it's not really feasible because you've got, a fully rented out strip mall, you've got fully rented apartments on the backside. So as they were first presenting this, I kind of was where your head is at, thinking, how does this fit into the overall very long-term plan? And if we put this in, does that disrupt that entire sector of what that was going to look like from a independent living, assisted living, long-term nursing care kind of palliative care? I still like that plan, but are we going to let properties sit empty for 20 years while waiting for the other property to become derelict enough to then be able to get transitioned over. I don't know. I will echo you all day, owner occupied, wherever we can get it. But also, are you gonna get someone to buy a 2-bedroom townhouse condo for $400,000 on Traceway? Because that's probably what it's gonna cost to be able to develop it in that area. I think that's the other thing to consider, is that based on location, what's the feasibility? Because I also don't want to build a building, great, they're owner occupied, but guess who owns them? The developer, because nobody wants to buy them. Is that going to be an issue? Maybe hypothetical, but just another thing that's going through my mind.
Yeah, I guess I would expect that the city would probably have to help out to get some kind of owner occupied to happen in an area like this. And we'll have a housing fund once we start closing these TIDs. One is hopefully closing next year. And I fully expect those things to have to supplement to have some of that stuff happen. I just think it's going to have to happen. It's the only way it will happen is if the city puts up money, because right now developers can make a heck of a lot of money on apartments. That's what they want to build because they're making a lot of money. So I fully expect the city would have to step up to provide some incentive for an owner-occupied product. Do I think it's going to be single-family homes? No, I don't. That's not feasible. So, anyway.
We could talk about this all night. I'll supply the beer, the peanuts. But I mean, look at downtown Madison, like Metropolitan Place. Those are owner occupied, and those are gorgeous, and those are urban. So there are ways around this. There are ways that everything could be satisfied. But back to what I was saying, this I think fits very well with the rest of that neighborhood, and I like the way it is. And
other comments or feedback? David, did you want to say something?
Yeah, if that's okay. I don't want to take a lot of time. I know you guys have had a long night tonight. I would just say I appreciate the mayor's perspective. I don't I don't disagree in any way that owner occupancy areas that historically have been marginalized. So I applaud that you're looking at that. There's some challenges that obviously come into play when you talk about ownership that I think some of the comments touched upon. For starters, we're not condominium developers. I mean, it's a specialty. There are, and I think someone even mentioned, I think Steve mentioned that there's financing challenges when it comes to financing condominiums, which is much different than an apartment building. Most banks, most lenders will give you the money to start construction until you have at least 50%. At least that was the old model. I don't know what the model is today. Hard cash deposits on condos that or townhomes that haven't even been built yet. And I think for a neighborhood like this, I just disagree with the I don't necessarily disagree with the outcome that the mayor is looking for, but I think the approach to get to a place where the area could support for sale housing, I just disagree in the approach. And I think the approach that I would take is to let's invest as much as we can in this area. I think that's what the city's starting to do with the hub, and we've been very committed to that program from day one in terms of trying to get more park space. Obviously, dedicating park space associated with the Highland was a big part of the hub, and also the community center. I mean, the community center is a big part of that. If you talk to the social workers at Leopold or at Chavez that oversee the children that live in our apartment buildings, they'll tell you that they need space. They need resources. I know us as landlords, we've been committed with a lot of the social service groups over the years. We have subsidized space for joining forces for families. We've supported originally it was an after-school program at the Pines for Chavez Elementary School kids. We ended up spending about $50,000 improving a larger classroom space. They had 24 kids in that after-school program. All their test scores improved. And then we made a space that was available for as many as 50 kids, which I encourage everyone to come and see because it's really nice, and it's a really it's a great use of the space, and it's a great amenity for our residents, and it's doing a lot of good. We ended up Nehemiah Chavez was having challenges with staffing that after school program. We brought in Nehemiah to see if they could kind of help fill the gap, and that was right when COVID hit, and they ended up converting it into a COVID pod learning center, which lasted all through the quarantine. So we're, in our view, we've done a lot, not just on improving like the facilities and the buildings themselves, but it's also about really making investments in the community and in the social service groups that are supporting our residents and creating spaces for them. So I absolutely agree that this area needs investment. It needs commitment. The condominium, we can't provide that, and especially not with the way that things are now in that location. I think if the city has funds available to push pilot programs like that, we're more than happy to engage with the city on that and talk about it, find potential locations for that. A couple other things that came up. Obviously the shopping center, we don't own the shopping center. We tried to buy the shopping center, which I think would have been great, assemble, but unfortunately, Steve Dorn bought it, and he's not going to do anything anytime soon, and so we can't, we have no relationship with him and can't rely on him to develop something or something else. At some point in the future, we kind of have to look at the here and now and what can we do, and we sort of we went pretty far out on the diving board back in 2007 when we tore the buildings down, and I don't know if anyone here remembers, but obviously we let the fire department come in and use it for training exercises, and no one really expected at that time that there was going to be such a huge financial crisis, but we've been sitting on empty dirt since then, and now it's we're sort of tasked with, hey, we need to do something here. We think that this is a good approach, and again, it continues the trajectory that I think that this neighborhood is on, and that I think that the city really wants to see. And obviously, that's been the feedback that we've been getting from a lot of our elected officials as well. There was a question about the parkland dedication allocations. It's correct. We did use the available credits for the 5-acre subject site, which is in front of you guys right now, for the High Line. There are 2 additional buildings which came down before we took ownership of these properties in 2005. Those are the 60 units that Lisa was referencing when we're talking about doing this parkland fee arrangement. And also, we've been in lots of discussions with Wade and Scott at the city about the hub and how we can best use this space. As much as I wish we had 5 acres, just laying around that we could dedicate towards, outdoor space, for kids, the hub really goes a long way to providing amenities for the Fitchburg residents in this area. What we're proposing is, in addition to the 60 units, is that, right now we have that tennis court area. I don't know if you can bring up the site plan again, Lisa, but we have the tennis courts area, which is between the area that we dedicated to the city as part of the High Line and the existing parking lot in front of the Fairways leasing office. And so my comment back to Scott and team that are working on the hub was, you guys are, we just dedicated this land, and granted, this is different than a greenfield site, right? This is urban infill, right? So you're not going to necessarily have a 5-acre park here, but there is some park space. And so instead of building the community center on the park space and then building a new parking lot, which you can see just to the left of the community center, what we proposed was, well, listen, that's where our tennis courts are right now. And that's part of the Fairways, and it's involved in the mortgage, and it's the separate ownership and all that stuff. But we could work together and try to get that tennis court area pulled out of that HUD financing, and then use that in conjunction with these 60 units to really make that hub project sing. And in addition to that, what we're saying is, instead of just converting those tennis courts to parking lot, what could happen here is that we could expand the existing easement at the Fairways Clubhouse, because right now there's an easement for golf course parking in that location. There's lots of parking, but we could expand that easement to include parking for the hub, in addition to all the street parking that you have out there on Traceway. Get rid of that parking lot, keep the community center, maybe move the community center over closer to the parking lot. But then you retain that parkland dedication that was part of the original dedication as part of the High Line. So these are all part of the ideas that we're talking to with staff, and obviously I just wanted to make the Plan Commission aware of all those moving parts as well.
Any additional thoughts? Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, just one kind of follow-up on the owner-occupied question. Is it possible to design this building in such a manner that it's very conducive down the road to a potential condo conversion?
That's a great question. We've done that before. I wouldn't say it was intentional. It was a factor that we considered when we designed it was a 10-story market rate apartment building in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. It's in Minneapolis. And in that project, we considered, it kind of went to sort of the quality of the finishes and the quality of the construction. And so so that building, for example, it was a concrete building, and which, for condos, sound transmission is a huge, that's a huge deal. So that was sort of working in that favor. But I would say the bigger issue when it comes to condo conversions, and not that we've done one, but that I've heard in the industry, is twofold: is your finish level, and your common area space. So when at finish level, I encourage you to come to the High Line, because if you come into those units right there, I mean, those are as nice as any condo project in Madison right now. And so I'm not concerned from a finish standpoint or how those units feel. The common area is a little bit tricky because if anyone's ever owned a condo, right, you want your condo fees to be low. If you want your fees to be low, you can't have a lot of common area to have to pay for and support and maintain and all that stuff. So that's why you see there's a disconnect between how condos are designed and how market rate apartments are designed. And so if this were going to be a type of condo approach, it would be very different. And I think you would give up a lot of the open space, the plaza, and a lot of the other that we haven't really gotten into here, but a lot of the really special amenities that we plan to include in. So I think it's possible that some future owner someday may take that upon themselves to do it. the other thing I would point out too is that condos, as much as owner occupancy does help and building equity in the community, definitely helps resolve some of the social challenges that we have. It's not like a perfect, right? If there's a problem with in the fairways, Chad knows, they call us and we deal with it, right? There's one owner, you're dealing with us. If you build a condo project, you're going to have 100 different owners that don't care what your problem is. All they care about is getting their mortgage payment covered. So it doesn't necessarily solve the puzzle, but I do think that investing in the area, making commitments like the hub, supporting the social service groups that are doing a lot of really amazing work in this area, and supporting the families. I mean, if you come to these properties, you'll see. I think people hear about like the problems, and yeah, there's poverty and there's challenges, and we deal with it. But people are thriving. They're doing well. These are quality, naturally occurring affordable housing. Obviously, the High Line is a subsidized affordable housing, but it's a good place to raise a family, and it's the units like Aaron said. When they were originally built, they were market rate and the nicest apartments in town, and as a result, they're oversized, which makes them a really good value for families. And I just think that this project that we're proposing and that we're talking about now, and I really enjoy the feedback that you guys are giving, is just another step in the right direction to what this really thriving neighborhood can be.
Other feedback at all, Emily?
Yeah, I would say I'm kind of mixed, but I really appreciate what you guys have been doing in the community and the investment made. Some of the things that I liked, I love how you guys are using an infill space, and I think it's a really smart use of the lot. I like the urban feel, but that it's still very much at a human scale. It's providing those eyes on the street, which increases safety and kind of that community feel. I am concerned about like parkland, the impervious surface, and also just to continue on the discussion about owner occupied, it would be really interesting to see if there would be the potential to do like a mix, and potentially the apartments stay as apartments, but the townhouses convert, 20 years down the line. I'm making it up, but some sort of program like that could be fun to test out and just see how it goes. So, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I don't see any other feedback for now, and there's no action to take on this, so I think we can proceed. Thank you for your time, David. And
yeah, thank you,
Kirk.
Have a good night.
All right, good night.
Thank you.
All right, moving along to report from department. Lisa?
Thank you.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, I said no report.
Oh, no report, okay.
Yeah.
Announcements, we hopefully will have a new planning and zoning manager by next meeting, so we're in the process of that right now. Otherwise,
I have one more thing, and I'm sorry to do this on a 4-hour night, but we see a lot of conditional use permits for electronic signs. We just had Taco Bell not that long ago. We've had McDonald's. The whole concern is having an electronic board and how many times it changes per day and how big it is, and the whole idea is that it's going to be distracting to drivers, right? Has anybody been driving down North Fish Hatchery and stopped at the light and seen the huge sign in Park Bank?
Yeah, that's inside.
Inside.
That's not subject to our rules.
It is not subject to our rules, but what I'm wondering is, the point behind why we review these electronic boards is for driver safety. As a plan commission, it still comes to us. I know that's not in our purview, but I think we need to think about that, because that, to me, way more distracting. And nothing against Park Bank, but you can't tell me that's for internal consumption. and that is way more distracting than a Taco Bell menu that I could probably recite to you, frontwards and backwards. But, and the fact that it changes every couple seconds. So the things that we review as a board for a 2 foot by 3 foot menu that changes once per day and it has to come here and we all have to spend time discussing it, that seems like a huge miss, I guess. So I wanted to bring it here and make it public.
Yeah, I think two things, and we can't discuss it. I'll just say that city's looking at revising our sign ordinance in general and electronic signs. And then two, we've had other complaints about that, and we're working on the park bank issue, because that was never in any plans that they gave us as a city. That was a surprise when that went up, so.
Well, that brings up something that I've thought, how do we get things on an agenda for a future discussion? Things like this. I would like to discuss conditional use permit standard conditions. I would like to have some training sessions set up like every 3, 4, 6 months from city staff.
Talk to either myself or Lisa or whoever, whenever we get a new person in. Any of us can work to schedule that. Like we did, for instance, we did one on smart code.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Yeah, so we can do some
But
more
the other
things like
thing
that.
is, if, with our luck, it could be planned for a night like today.
Right.
Like.
It's a little flexible.
Yeah, but I would like to see, because there's so many things that we could, even though we might be in the business, there's some things that are new, like IDA, I've been reading about them, and there's a lot we could learn.
Yep, absolutely. All right.
So just one point of clarification,
Go ahead,
and
Lisa.
stop me if we can't discuss it, but that kind of signage at Park Bank is not permitted per our code, and it is considered a sign and is governed by our sign ordinance, and it's a matter that planning staff is addressing. But I just wanted to clarify that it's not permitted and it is a sign and is governed by our sign ordinance, so
All right, thank you.
just so everyone knows.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Randy, seconded by Steven. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, have a good night. Happy holidays.